Chapter 1, The Voice, Prologue. It was a normal day, just like any day for our MC Daimon Grey, as he was balled up on the ground as 4 other teenagers stood around him and kicked his body until they felt satisfied. Once they were done, they grabbed his bag and started to throw all the books and other items at his body as they laughed. "Haha, look at him guys, he's shaking with fear," said the bully as he walked up to Daimon and grabbed his hair, lifting his face up so everybody can see. "Come on Daimon, we're just having some fun buddy," stated the bully as the others laughed. The rain began to pour then, as if reflecting Daimon's inner turmoil. The bullies scattered, leaving him alone in the downpour. He was used to it, the physical pain and humiliation. He'd accepted long ago that this was his life. At least, that's what he told himself, while in reality he was getting tired of this treatment. Things used to be different in the beginning. Daimon would fight back every time, but the bullies always came at him with their numbers, 3 to 5 against 1. After a while, he couldn't take it anymore and lost the will to fight. He tried various tactics, ignoring them, reporting them, even going to the police or running away. But nothing seemed to work. The only reason they were getting away with it was because the main bully's father was the one of the richest businessmen in the city. He sent his son to public schools so that he could learn about hardship and humility, or so the rumor went. But all it seemed to do was embolden the boy, who wielded his father's status, intimidating teachers and students alike. Daimon pushed himself off the wet ground, wincing as pain shot through his battered body. He gathered his scattered belongings, shoving them back into his backpack. The rain washed away the dirt and blood, leaving behind a hardness in his eyes. After picking up all his belongings, he walked home in the rain despite the constant pain that his body was experiencing, but he was used to it. Once he walked into his house, he went into his room and placed his bag on his soaking wet backpack on his desk. Afterwards he went to the bathroom and cleaned himself up. He first took a shower and cleaned himself, then once he was out, he put some healing ointment on his bruises. Once he was done, he returned to his room. Normally his aunt would be home, but she was on a business trip in Canada. Daimon took out his wet notebooks and placed them in front of his portable heaters so that they could dry up. In the meantime, he went to the kitchen and put a frozen pizza in the oven. While he waited, he set a timer for 45 minutes and went to the living room, where he lay on the floor and stared up at the ceiling. He didn't know why, but whenever he did this his mind felt at peace. Being at home was the only time that he could relax. As his mind started to drift, he started to hear a voice in his head. "Weak," the voice said, causing Daimon to sit up and look around the room. The voice sounded like it was directly behind him, yet when he looked around, he didn't see anyone. That's when he heard a chuckle. "Still letting those bullies get to you, eh?" The voice wasn't unkind, but it held a certain level of mockery. Daimon spun around, but there was no one behind him. He scanned the room, his heart pounding, but there's no one. He buried his face in his hands, scrubbing at his eyes. "Too many hits to the head," he reasoned, "that must be it." The mocking voice continued, "You know you don't have to live like this." Daimon paused and looked towards the direction of the voice. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" he asked aloud. "I'm just a voice in your head," the voice replied calmly. "As for what I want, well, what do you want?" Daimon thought for a moment. He wanted to end this cycle of torment. He wanted respect, and most of all he wanted revenge. He didn't want to keep living like this, constantly being beaten by people who hold a higher position in life than he does. "Then let's do it," the voice spoke again, more determined this time. "Do what?" Daimon asked, feeling confused. "Stand up to them. Fight back." Daimon laughed sarcastically at the thought of it. "How am I supposed to do that? There are 4 of them and they're all much stronger than I am." The voice didn't answer immediately. Instead, it asked a question that Daimon hadn't expected. "Your favorite story is the Star Wars story, yes?" asked the voice. "Yeah." Daimon replied slowly, not sure where this was going. "Well," the voice said, how about you reach your hand out and focus on moving something with your mind?" asked the voice. "You're kidding, right?" he said, but the voice remained silent, as if waiting. With a sigh of resignation, Daimon held up his hand and focused intensely on a pen lying on the coffee table. He pictured it moving in his mind, trying to will it towards him. Nothing happened at first, which was exactly what he had expected. However, he noticed a slight quiver in the pen. It was barely noticeable. Figuring it was just a trick of the light or his mind playing games with him, he decided to focus again. To his surprise and disbelief, the pen shifted a little. It was subtle and it didn't move much, but it indeed moved. Daimon blinked in disbelief as he stared at the now slightly displaced pen. He shook himself out of his stupor and tried again, reaching out with his hand and focusing all his thoughts on the pen. Once again, the pen moved. This time it wasn't just a slight shift. The pen rolled over towards him, stopping just short of his hand. "Interesting, yes, interesting indeed," said the voice. "I have only given you a small fraction of the power you desire, yet through your will for revenge you have managed to focus your mind. But you still have a long way to go before you are ready, so for the next 3 months you will learn how to use the basics of using the Force. Normally it wouldn't be enough to win you any fight against another Force user, but seeing as your world doesn't have any other people that can use the Force, then you don't need much training," explained the voice. Daimon nodded, becoming eager to start his training, and for the 3 months can fly by so that he can hurry up and get his revenge on the people that bullied him. So, for the next 3 months Daimon went to school and lived his normal life of going to school, getting out of school, getting bullied, then going back home. Except this time when he returned home, he trained himself in using the Force. Some days it amounted to nothing, while other days he gained a little more understanding of how to use it. Every day of the week that passed, he was highly motivated to begin training himself. On weekdays the bullying like usual was just a routine part of his day that he just had to go through. On the weekends he was free to train as long as he wanted and make great progress. His aunt had come home after a month had passed and spent some time with him, helping him with his work and making sure that he was well taken care of before she eventually left for another business trip 2 weeks before the end of his 3-month training time frame. By the end of the 3 months, he was able to lift small objects with ease, even from a distance. He was far from the Jedi or Sith within Star Wars, but it was a start. The power he held awakened within him a newfound confidence and resolve. Finally, the day arrived when he decided to use his newfound skills against his tormentors. He woke up extra early and practiced what he had learned, focusing on controlling his abilities. His walk to school was filled with anticipation instead of dread for once. Once he arrived at school, he took a deep breath and went in, ready to face whatever came his way. In the back of the school where he usually got beat up after school, the bullies were already there waiting for him. Jared, who always wore an arrogant smirk, called out to Daimon in that same irritatingly cocky tone. "Daimon, you're early today. Were you missing us?" Jared mocked as the others laughed along with him. Daimon simply looked at him and slowly began to walk towards them. Using his abilities subtly, Daimon tripped one bully by manipulating a small rock underneath his foot, causing the bully to stumble backwards into 2 others, knocking them over like dominoes. The laughter stopped abruptly and was replaced by looks of confusion. As the bullies scrambled to regain their composure, Jared was confused. "Daimon, what the hell is going on?" Jared stuttered. Ignoring the question, Daimon spoke, "You've had your fun for far too long. Today, it ends." With a flick of his wrist, Daimon sent another small stone flying towards Jared, who barely managed to dodge it. The stone shattered a nearby window, sending a jolt of fear through the bullies. However, Daimon didn't stop there as he grabbed Jared himself and slung him into a wall. Seeing these inhuman actions, the other bullies ran away, leaving Jared behind without even thinking twice about whether he would survive this. On the other hand, Daimon began to release all his anger that he had built up and took it all out on Jared. He didn't even give him a chance to talk back. About a minute later, Daimon had stopped and watched as Jared's body dropped to the ground lifeless. A small smile had creeped up on his face as he started to laugh like a bloodthirsty killer. However, in the middle of this laughter, he felt his body start to grow weak before he fell the ground. Before he knew it, everything started to turn black and the voice that had given him this power had returned. "Excellent, yes, this is excellent work," said this voice. "What's going on?" asked Daimon. Hearing this, the voice started to laugh at this question. "It's simple really, in exchange for that power, your body would shut down upon completion of your revenge, because of the midi-chlorians which I implanted in your body 3 months ago. Your body, or more specifically, the human bodies in this universe, have never had midi-chlorians implanted into their bodies, so naturally your body would first try to fight it off. However, the midi-chlorians are too strong for any human body to fight off, so after some time the body would begin to shut down because the midi-chlorians couldn't exist together with your body. You only lived because I kept your body functioning until you had your revenge," explained the voice. Instead of getting angry at the fact that he was tricked, Daimon just accepted the fact that he got outplayed and was blinded by his need for revenge. "I'm an idiot," Daimon said. "Indeed, you are an idiot. But an entertaining idiot at that," mocked the voice. "You've lived your life as an underdog, a weak being who achieved little to nothing besides taking revenge. Now I want to see how you will live your life when you have the potential to be the most powerful person in the galaxy." Daimon was confused at his words and was about to question him, but before he could somehow, he opened his eyes as the darkness was replaced by a bright light. "Now, let's see how entertaining this will be," said the voice. Chapter 2, Origins. As he opened his eyes, Daimon sat up and scanned his surroundings, recalling the last words of the mysterious voice that had guided him. "Now I want to see how you will live your life when you have the potential to be the most powerful person in the galaxy." His gaze dropped to his hands, which now boasted a striking purple skin tone, a reminder of his new identity. Moments later, a ton of information surged into his mind, reshaping his understanding of who he was. His primary species was Jedi, a fact easily recognizable to others. However, he also carried the genetic heritage of numerous other species, each contributing unique abilities that enhanced his already formidable capabilities. As a Jedi, his body was composed of regenerative tentacles, granting him rapid healing abilities that made him nearly indestructible. He realized that, while he could withstand grievous injuries, a direct blow to his head could still prove fatal, particularly if it severed the core nerves in his neck. The implications of his longevity struck him. Jedi could live for several millennia, so long as they avoided death. From the Keshian lineage, he inherited the remarkable ability to perceive a broad spectrum of radiation through his eyes, a skill that could be invaluable in detecting hidden dangers. The Kiffer blood in him allowed him to touch objects and glean memories, known as psychometry, a powerful asset for uncovering truths long buried. Additionally, the Zeltron influence endowed him with the ability to emit pheromones that enhanced his attractiveness and charm, making it easier to sway others to his cause. Next, memories flooded back, revealing how he ended up in this extraordinary situation. He had once lived a simple life in a small village on Feldari, his home world, when a Jedi ship descended from the stars. The Jedi sought a Force-sensitive individual, guided by a sense of destiny that had eluded them for centuries. They had visited Dratha repeatedly, yet each time left empty-handed, deeming the Jedi incapable of producing Force sensitives. This time, however, the Force had led them directly to him. Surrounded by robed figures, each radiating authority and wisdom, Daimon felt an unsettling mix of awe and anxiety. The tension hung thick in the air as the Jedi assessed him, their eyes reflecting both curiosity and caution. The village elder, a 2,000-year-old Jedi, stepped forward, fully aware of the Jedi's intent. Speaking in a calm, low voice, he addressed them with a knowledge born of experience. "You seek the one you have come for," he said, gesturing subtly toward Daimon. The elder had always sensed that Daimon was destined for greatness, perhaps as a leader or a champion, rather than a life confined to their humble village. The elder had nurtured Daimon since his parents abandoned him for a more affluent life, leaving him behind for reasons that remained a mystery. This act had ignited a fierce dislike in the elder, prompting him to adopt the boy as his own. Over the years, he had come to believe in Daimon's potential, feeling it resonate deeply within him. Yet, as these thoughts coursed through his mind, Daimon sensed an external influence, an unseen force guiding him, shaping his narrative even as he struggled to find his own path. The Jedi listened intently, their nods signaling comprehension as the elder shared Daimon's story. Slowly, the unease that had initially gripped him began to dissolve, replaced by curiosity and wonder. One might think the elder possessed the ability to foresee the future, given his profound insights about destiny, but this was not the case. Then, the eldest Jedi stepped forward, extending a hand toward Daimon. He flinched slightly, instinctively wary of the unknown. "Fear not," the Jedi said in a soothing voice. "We mean you no harm." The Jedi was tall and slender, his silver hair cascading down his shoulders, a testament to his age yet accompanied by eyes brimming with vitality. "We are here," he continued, "to help you understand your potential. You are special, Daimon," he whispered. "Your destiny is not tied to this village or this planet." He gestured expansively around them, showing the humble homes and fertile fields of the village. "You are destined for so much more." With those words resonating in his mind, Daimon departed with the Jedi, leaving behind the only life he had ever known. As they ascended into the star-speckled sky, Daimon cast a final glance at his home. The view from above was breathtaking, little huts clustered together, surrounded by sprawling fields, a sight he would forever cherish. Once they broke free of Feldari's atmosphere, a sudden wave of dizziness washed over Daimon, prompting him to sit down. He closed his eyes for just a moment that proved pivotal as the old Daimon faded away, replaced by the new. This marked the beginning of his extraordinary journey. Chapter 3: Becoming a Jedi Knight. For the rest of his time on the ship, Daimon had asked a lot of questions about the Order. Not that he didn't already know, but he needed to act like he didn't know anything to not raise any suspicion from the Jedi. Then again, they only just met him, so he had a lot to work with and could change some things along the way. "The previous Daimon is gone. While I am not sure where he has gone, I thank him for his sacrifice in allowing me to live once again in this great universe," Daimon said in his head. What he didn't know is that while he was doing this, he had entered into a state of meditation. As Daimon settled into the meditative state, he felt the fabric of his new existence begin to weave itself around him. The memories of the boy he used to faded, and he embraced the possibilities of this new life. No longer was he a victim, he now had limitless potential to be whatever he wanted. Becoming a Jedi Master was just the first step. He was going to live for thousands of years, which would give him plenty of time to become the most powerful being in the galaxy. Becoming a Jedi Master would allow him access to all the information he needed to gain power by learning all of the Jedi secrets and experimenting with what he learned. As he learned all of the teachings and other stuff from the Jedi Order, he would also explore the abilities of the dark side before the Dark Jedi are banished. Only difference is, he would not choose to worship the dark or light side of the Force. He would worship the Force itself and strive to balance both sides, a grey Jedi in essence, treading the line between light and darkness. Days turned into weeks, then months, and eventually years. Daimon trained relentlessly, sharpening his skills and deepening his understanding of the Force. He was a natural learner, absorbing information like a sponge, rapidly surpassing other students in their training and becoming a well-known Jedi initiate. He had made many friends during his training, but only one he was exceptionally close to was a Togruta named Shrimi Ilam. She and him trained hand in hand in their free time, hoping to learn more about the Force together. During the first few years he had managed to understand the Force through his contact with other Jedi Masters and Knights whom he was able to learn their memories, which allowed him to understand the Force much faster than the others. During his training, he also began experimenting with integrating his non-human abilities into his Jedi skills. In just 2 years, he had managed to control the Force to such a level that even the Jedi Council was curious and very much interested in Daimon's connection with the Force. As a result, Daimon was sometimes given special training and often met with Jedi Council members multiple times. During his youngling years, Daimon was taught basic skills, such as learning to use the Force through meditation and simple exercises, basic proto-saber techniques with training sabers, understanding the Jedi code and ethics, and developing physical fitness and coordination. 5 years later, when he turned 10, Daimon had become a Padawan to Jedi Master Serena Corrin, who was a powerful Jedi Master born on Corellia. She was found to be Force-sensitive by Jedi scouts and brought to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant to learn the ways of the Jedi. As a youngling she excelled in her studies, and as the years passed, she became known for her sharp intellect and strategic mind. She developed a talent for saber combat, particularly Form 3, Sorsu, which emphasized defense and patience. During her time as a Padawan, she participated in numerous missions, often serving as a mediator in conflicts due to her exceptional diplomatic skills. After successfully completing the trials of knighthood, she was knighted at the age of 21. She dedicated her life to preserving peace in the galaxy, focusing on humanitarian efforts and conflict resolution. Her wisdom and compassion earned her the respect of her peers, and she was eventually appointed to the Jedi Council. Because of her dedicated background, she was the one chosen to become Daimon's master and to teach him the ways of the Force, while also having a chance to learn from Daimon, who proved to be very attuned to the Force when he first arrived than any other Padawan in the history of the Jedi. 2 years later, 7043 BBY. Daimon, age 12. Daimon was in a sparring session against his master, testing the skills that she had taught him over the past 2 years. Daimon, who was already 6 feet tall because of the way Jedi grew, moved with the grace she had expected from him. His footwork was the best she had seen. As he spun his blue proto-saber with ease, she had focused her mind to not become distracted. His movements were swift and precise, bolstered by the power of the Force flowing through him. Master Corrin met his strikes with her own, her green proto-saber clashing against his blue one in a flurry of sparks. Although she maintained a stern expression, her eyes radiated a hint of pride. She observed how Daimon moved, how he anticipated her attacks and countered them before they even landed. He was a natural, there was no doubt about it, but more than that, he had an extraordinary connection with the Force which she saw enhanced his fighting abilities to another level. Given some time, and he might become the greatest proto-saber duelist within the Order, something she believed could happen. Their sparring session went on for a while, both Jedi testing their strengths and skills against each other. It was not a battle of dominance but one of learning, an opportunity for Daimon to better understand his own potential. Striking, parrying, spinning with a grace that was beyond his years, Daimon barely broke a sweat even after almost an hour of intense training. His focus never wavered, and his determination only seemed to increase with every passing minute. It was then that Master Corrin decided to test him further. With a swift movement, she disengaged from their combat and closed her eyes momentarily. In the following moment, Daimon felt the Force around him shift. The air became denser, and he could feel invisible obstacles being erected all around him. When he looked at his master, he saw her eyes open again, filled with a silent challenge. Daimon didn't hesitate. His grip on the proto-saber tightened as he leapt up high, the Force propelling him over the unseen barriers effortlessly. Master Corrin's gaze followed him as he soared over her head. She admired his audacity and clever use of the Force. Once Daimon landed behind her, she quickly turned to face him but found him already in position with a confident smile tugging at the corner of his lips. The room was silent except for the soft hum of their proto-sabers. Despite his obvious satisfaction at conquering her challenge, Daimon lowered his weapon in a gesture of respect towards his master. "I'm ready for what comes next, Master Corrin," he said. With a nod of approval, she deactivated her proto-saber and gestured for Daimon to do the same. As their weapons fell silent, Master Corrin spoke. "Daimon, bear in mind that strength is nothing without wisdom. What you have demonstrated today is not merely combat prowess but the capacity to adapt and overcome challenges. Your journey as a Jedi is far from over, she said, her stern expression softening into a smile. Daimon listened to her words while in his head he had managed to hold himself back from overpowering his master. When they first met, Master Corran had placed her hand on Daimon's shoulder while talking about some Jedi nonsense that he ignored since he already heard it before. Meanwhile, from Master Corran touching him, he managed to learn her memories and experiences, which over time would increase his abilities from learning the experiences of a Jedi Master. 6 years later, 7038 BBY. Daimon, age, 17. Throughout his time as a Padawan, Daimon participated in many practical missions with Master Corran to get real-world experience. During a diplomatic mission to Trandosha, Daimon successfully managed to negotiate with the Trandoshan people to get them to join the Galactic Republic. He addressed their concerns and advocated for a fair resolution that would benefit not only the Trandoshan people but also the broader interests of the Republic. He managed to assert the benefits of joining the Republic without downplaying their culture and traditions, showing respect for their autonomy. The Trandoshans were swayed by Daimon's compelling arguments accompanied by his clear understanding of their traditions and customs. They appreciated his sincere efforts to find a peaceful solution instead of resorting to forceful persuasion. At last, they agreed to join the Galactic Republic, marking a significant victory for both Daimon and Master Corran. Master Corran watched from a distance with a sense of overwhelming pride as her Padawan skillfully resolved one of the most complicated diplomatic disputes in recent memory. She felt a surge of satisfaction, knowing that her teachings had been instrumental to this achievement, but also a deep respect for Daimon's independent thinking and initiative. She had taught him well, but as she watched him, she realized he had far surpassed not only her expectations, but the expectations of the Jedi Order. Back at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, news of their successful mission spread quickly among the Jedi. The council members were particularly impressed by Daimon's diplomatic skills and his ability to influence others for the greater good of the galaxy. This was not the only major event that Daimon participated in. He also assisted in settling dozens of disputes between planets, negotiating alliances with various planets, and mastering the art of battle meditation, a skill few Jedi ever fully grasped. Battle meditation is a force ability that considerably boosted the morale, stamina, and overall battle prowess of an individual's allies while simultaneously reducing the opposition's combat effectiveness by eroding their will to fight. It worked on entire fleets of ships, allowing them to perform at maximum efficiency, acting as a single entity with the ability to counter every enemy move quickly and effectively. His being able to use this didn't come as a surprise to Master Corran as she knew firsthand how connected to the Force Daimon was. Once he reached 17, Daimon completed his Jedi Knight trials which tested his proficiency in saber techniques by having him duel 4 other skilled opponents at once. Next, he demonstrated his mastery over various force powers, such as telekinesis, mind tricks, various defensive abilities, etc., to showcase his connection to the Force. After that was a crisis response test, where he had to respond to a simulated crisis or conflict and demonstrate his ability to think critically and act decisively under pressure. The next few tests were moral and ethical decision-making, diplomacy and negotiation, and his knowledge of Jedi history, showing his commitment to the values of the Jedi. The last test was a personal reflection test which was basically Daimon reflecting on his training, personal growth, and understanding of the Force. From the beginning everybody knew he would pass, so when it was announced it didn't come as a surprise to anyone. At the same time, his longtime friend Trimi Ilam had also passed her trials and they both became Jedi Knights. To celebrate, the two of them went out into the bustling streets of Coruscant and found a small, tucked-away tea house that Daimon had heard about from one of his many missions. The place was calm and serene, a stark contrast to the sounds and liveliness of Coruscant outside. It was a peaceful retreat within the bustling cityscape, its soft lights and aromatic brews creating an atmosphere of tranquility that both Jedi welcomed. Sitting across from each other, they enjoyed their tea in silence at first, their minds filled with memories of their trials, triumphs and tribulations. Then, almost as if on cue, they started talking about their journeys. The challenges faced, the lessons learned, and the experiences that shaped them both individually and collectively as Jedi Knights. Shrimi Ilum was an accomplished Jedi in her own right. Her abilities with the Force were unique, unlike any other Jedi Knight within the Order. Her ability to empathize with others allowed her to connect deeply with the people she encountered in her missions, making her an effective mediator in disputes and conflicts. She admired Daimon's knowledge of galactic politics and his ability to handle complex situations and his powerful connection to the Force. Daimon, however, over the years, has been holding back his true abilities, since he didn't want to draw too much attention to himself because of how powerful he was. So far, he has managed to use just enough of his connection with the Force to make him look like prodigy. And now that he was a Jedi Knight, he could gain access to the dark side texts that the Jedi still kept. The concept of a Sith at this time was not a thing that had been invented yet, and right now Jedi were allowed to practice both the dark and light side of the Force, learning a balance between the two. However, one could see that a few Jedi were already favoring the other side over the other, which had begun to start a few problems within the Order. Daimon knew this was the prelude to the 100-Year Darkness, also known as the 100-Year War, when a group of dark Jedi created monstrous armies to battle the Jedi Order and the Galactic Republic. Before this happened, he would study all the dark texts that the Jedi had before the war started. Once he learned all he could from what the Jedi had, then he would leave the Jedi to go on his own path, seeking more knowledge from around the galaxy. His greatest advantage was his pre-existing knowledge of Star Wars lore from his previous life. He would use his knowledge to become the most powerful being in existence while making many friends and enemies along the way. Chapter 4, The Sentinel Path. The following day after he passed his trials and was now a Jedi Knight, Daimon was asked to choose whether he wanted to pursue training as a Jedi Guardian, Jedi Consular, or Jedi Sentinel. He had already decided on Jedi Sentinel since, unlike the other two, a Jedi Sentinel sought a balance between both the abilities of a Guardian and Consular. Jedi Sentinels took both the Guardian and Consular profession and amplified them with a series of non-force skills, such as security, computers, stealth techniques, demolitions, repair, or medicine. Choosing this path would allow Daimon to have well-rounded abilities, thus being ready to deal with a wide range of situations. Furthermore, his ability to mediate in disputes and conflicts along with his proficiency in combat made the Sentinel route the most fitting for him. "I'll go the Sentinel route, Master," he announced, not surprised by how easily Master Corran took it. She merely nodded in agreement, knowing that her former Padawan was capable of making his own decisions and was mature enough to understand their implications. After choosing their paths, Daimon and Shrimi had met up to see the path the other had chosen, and as expected Shrimi had chosen the Jedi Consular path, which fit her personality and capabilities. A Jedi Consular sought diplomatic measures in spreading peace and harmony across the Galactic Republic. Refraining from igniting their proto-sabers except as a measure of last resort, Consulars spent a great deal of time studying the mysteries of the Force. "Congratulations, Shrimi," he smiled warmly at her, "the Consular path suits you well." She met his gaze with a small smile of her own, "And Sentinel suits you, Daimon. Just remember not to stretch yourself too thin," she said as a joke, but a hint of seriousness was also present in her voice. He acknowledged her concern with a nod. The Jedi Sentinel path was indeed demanding due to its broad scope, but Daimon was more than ready to take on the challenge. After all, it was what he aimed for, to gain a well-rounded knowledge base encompassing any and everything that would help him throughout his life. Over the following weeks and months, Daimon and Shrimi settled into their respective paths. They continued training under the watchful eyes of the Jedi Masters and embarked on critical missions around the galaxy. As Sentinels were also tasked with tracking down and eliminating the dark side influence within the Republic, Daimon found himself working closely with the Republic's intelligence agencies. He had a growing reputation because of his height, which was 8 feet 2 and making him tower over most people he encountered, and his impressive proficiency in various fields. These elements, coupled with his natural charisma and diplomatic prowess, saw him sent to handle many high-stake missions across disparate worlds. One such mission brought him to the wild frontiers of the Outer Rim, where a brewing conflict over mining rights threatened to ignite a full-scale war. Daimon was dispatched to mediate the friction between powerful corporate entities and the indigenous populace who vehemently resisted their incursion. Sentinel Security Solutions, a corporation that provided advanced security systems and personnel for other corporations, and Part-1 Industries, who specialized in the production of ore for weaponry and armor, were caught in a scandal with the local population of Jabim. The Jabimi have lived in peace for thousands of years since the fall of Zim's empire, but now they were undergoing another conflict where two corporations were exploiting their planet's raw resources and forcing people to work in harsh conditions while receiving little pay to make up for it. They were led by Akholarka, a Jabim Congress representative who has been fighting against the corporations for over 20 years. And now all his fighting has finally come to fruition as the people have sided with him and launched protests that grew increasingly violent in response to what they perceived as inhumane conditions. Daimon's main mission was to prevent a conflict between the two, while also investigating the harsh conditions that the corporation have the people working under. When he arrived, the situation was critical. Unrest filled the air, and he could sense how much anger the people felt against the corporations. "It's worse than I anticipated," he admitted out loud as he walked through Choel, the capital city of the planet. People from all walks of life lurked in the corners, their faces grim and foreboding. Graffiti on the walls screamed slogans of revolt: "Give back our home, access to resources for all, end corporate exploitation now." Tall grey buildings towered over the populace, the logos of Sentinel Security Solutions and Part-1 Industries embossed in bold letters at the top, the ultimate symbols of corporate greed. Armed security personnel patrolled the sidewalks, their presence only increasing the growing resentment. Daimon walked through the streets with his grey Jedi robe, a hood that he had pulled up over his head to conceal his face. As he made his way through the grimy city streets, he found himself stepping over broken cobblestones and navigating through rundown neighborhoods. Banner-hung alleys led to bustling local markets whilst decrepit slums sat in the shadow of towering corporation buildings. Choel was a city of contradictions. On one side, there were the oppressed masses who lived under the iron fist of the corporations, their lives stripped down to toiling and scrapping for survival in a city that had stripped them of dignity and hope. On the other side, there were the corporations, a nexus of power and wealth, its influence permeating every realm of life on Jabim. The seeds of rebellion had been sowed years ago, and with each passing day, they grew closer to fruition. With Akholarka at their helm, Daimon had little doubt that a bloody confrontation was imminent if not diffused quickly. But the only way he saw a conflict being avoided was the corporations being expulsed from the planet and trailed in a republic court. By sundown, Daimon arrived at the headquarters of Sentinel Security Solutions, where he was supposed to meet with its CEO, Danik Jericho. He was welcomed in by an assistant who led him into an expansive office marked by large windows that offered spectacular views of the city below. "Ah, Jedi Knight Daimon," Jericho greeted him with a smile, rising to his feet behind a gleaming durasteel desk. He was a tall man in his late 40s, with dark hair. "Your reputation precedes you. Indeed, it's an honor to meet the man attempting to solve our little disagreement." While he said this out loud, in his head he was thinking of ways to get rid of Daimon, whom he knows will 100% shut him down if he finds out what is really going on. "Thank you for having me, Mr. Jericho," Daimon replied. "I'm here to investigate the allegations of inhuman corporate practices." Danik Jericho raised an eyebrow, his smile faltering slightly. "I assure you, Jedi Knight Daimon, we here at Sentinel Security Solutions are committed to ethical conduct and the well-being of our workers." "I do hope so," Daimon said calmly. "But I'll need to see for myself before I can believe it." He didn't want to sound confrontational, but he also couldn't afford to be too accommodating. The allegations against Sentinel Security Solutions and Part-1 Industries were serious, after all. Of course, Jericho agreed smoothly. You're most welcome to look around, speak with our employees. Our doors are open. Then I will do just that. Daimon stood up and left the office to conduct his investigation. Despite what he may already know, he needed to find evidence of the inhumane practices before he makes his move. Jericho on the other hand had called up some of his security teams to deal with the Jedi and pin his death on the violent civilians. He called 3 5-man security teams thinking that it would be enough to kill Daimon. As Daimon investigated the Sentinels' facilities over the next few days, he noticed the staff's reluctance to speak up. Their eyes contained a flicker of fear every time he tried to engage in conversation about their work conditions. It was clear that something was up. He also met with the local populace and protesters in secret. Through their stories and accounts, a grim picture began to form. Overworked employees, hazardous work conditions, low wages, all while the corporations reaped immense profits from Jobim. He met with Akho Larka in a secret location away from prying eyes. A man of passion and principle, Larka relayed his people's suffering with raw, heart-wrenching detail. He spoke of the shattered lives and broken dreams that bore the brunt of corporate greed. His anger was immense but bound by his commitment to his people. In response, Daimon promised action. While he couldn't reveal his full plans just yet, he assured Larka that the Republic and Jedi Order were not blind to their suffering. The conversation ended on a hopeful note with Larka promising to hold off his people for a few more days before they couldn't take it anymore. Returning to the Sentinels' facility on the third day of his investigation, Daimon was ready for what he knew awaited him. As he passed by a poorly lit corridor, he felt the presence of 15 security guards hiding nearby. In response, he stopped walking and crossed his arms. "You guys can come out now," he called out. As he said this, 15 security guards surrounded him. Armed to the teeth, they closed in on him, their faces hidden behind visored helmets. Professional and well-disciplined, they moved with the precision of seasoned warriors, falling into a circular formation around Daimon. "We don't want any trouble," one of the guards said, his hand resting on a blaster's grip. He wanted Daimon to lower his guard so that they could kill him without having to fight the 8-foot brute standing in front of them. "I'm afraid trouble has found you," he said as he extended his hand, using the force to pull the blasters out of their hands. The guards reacted by charging towards Daimon to try and beat him in hand-to-hand combat. Unlucky for them, Daimon was a Jedi mixed with a number of other species, his body enhanced beyond basic human comprehension. As the first guard lunged at him, Daimon dodged him easily and landed a solid punch on his chest, causing him to crumple in pain. The other guards attacked simultaneously, attempting to overwhelm him. With swift movements, he managed to evade their attacks, retaliating with strong and precise blows that sent them flying. Within minutes, Daimon had incapacitated all 15 guards with ease. He looked around the room at his fallen opponents before making his way back to the main part of the facility. This encounter had proven what he already knew: Sentinel security solutions would stop at nothing to maintain their power and control. With this, Daimon returned to Danik Jericho's office. The surprise on Jericho's face was evident as he saw Daimon enter unscathed. "Your security is good," Daimon began, "but not good enough. Your reputation falls short, Mr. Jericho." "I expected a greater challenge," Daimon continued. He felt the faint trace of fear within Jericho's mind. Danik was silent for a moment, contemplating his next move. Daimon was not confrontational by nature, but he could not ignore injustice, especially when it came with such grave consequences. He was about to craft a story and shift the blame, but Daimon saw through this. "Actually, I'll give you one chance to surrender now and submit yourself to the courts. This is your only chance," Daimon said, with a serious face as he was done playing games. Jericho chuckled lightly, as if Daimon's proposal was completely absurd. "And why on earth would I do that?" was the last thing he said before he found himself lifted off the ground and gasping for air. No member of the Jedi Order was present, so he could resort to aggressive means to force the CEO to do what he wanted. Using the Force, Daimon pulled Jericho towards him and placed his hand on his head. You will have your guards arrest the CEO of Part-1 Industries and gather evidence of your company's inhumane practices. You will hand them over to the Republic and confess your crimes, Daimon commanded. Unlike the normal Jedi mind trick, Daimon's ability allowed him to basically command a weak-minded person with ease to do whatever he wanted. Jericho stopped struggling as his mind was completely overridden by the Force. A few seconds later, Daimon released his grip and watched as Jericho stood up and began to do as commanded, pulling out his COMM link to issue orders to his staff. Within hours, the CEO of Part-1 Industries was arrested in his office by the guards he hired from Sentinel Security Solutions. Then Republic officials had arrived, and the prosecution of the companies was underway. Daimon had completed his mission and successfully prevented a conflict. He was thanked by the local populace and protesters, their faces glowing with relief and gratitude. A small spark of hope had been lit in the hearts of Jabiim's residents, their burdened lives momentarily lightened by this unexpected turn of events. Meanwhile, as a Jedi consular, Shrimi also started navigating her own path in intricate interstellar politics. Her empathetic abilities allowed her to defuse volatile situations and reinforce peace effectively across various systems. Separately, they both followed their destinies with dedication and tenacity. They became more refined in their roles, developing into seasoned Jedi Knights with each new challenge they overcame. Their training and experiences prepared them for greater trials that lay ahead. In his off time, Daimon also mastered many other fields involving computers, engineering, and demolitions. After a few months of studying engineering, he had managed to start his own project, which would see him create his own droid to accompany him on his missions and for when he left the Order. He dubbed it Project Cortana. Yes, as the name implies, he decided to try and bring Cortana to the Star Wars universe. Who else would he want to have as his right hand other than the infamous Cortana from the Halo series? He could already picture it, Cortana absolutely decimating his enemies, becoming the most infamous droid ever. But more than just a destructive force, he sought to create a companion of knowledge and intelligence that could assist on complex missions that required more than brute force. Shrimi, on the other hand, chose to spend most of her free time in the vast libraries of the Order. She could always be found with her nose in a book or silently meditating, focusing her mind and questing for deeper understanding of the Force. Over time, she became adept at interpreting visions granted by the Force and gained notable recognition for her healing prowess. The Jedi Council, hoping to capitalize on Daimon's abilities, didn't waste time and assigned a Padawan to him much earlier than expected. His Padawan, a young Zabrak named Eiko, was quick-witted and agile with a fiery determination to grow stronger. However, when Daimon saw the boy, he had a short vision that showed what appeared to be an adult Zabrak standing over the dead corpses of a few Jedi while he wielded a red saber. Seeing the vision, Daimon's eyes widened in disbelief for a moment. The image of the adult Zabrak's defiant gaze above the fallen bodies of his brethren was etched into his memory. In this moment he voiced his concerns about the Zabrak's future. But the Jedi Council couldn't see what he saw and had ignored his protests. In response, Daimon refused to take Eiko as a Padawan, which made the young Eiko frustrated and confused, while the Jedi Council had simply said they understood his decision and decided to give Eiko to another Jedi Knight to train. It was not what he wanted, and he had a bad feeling about Eiko. But it was not up to him to decide, so instead he decided to keep an eye on him instead, making sure to monitor his progress. Worst case scenario, he might have to make a difficult decision. Chapter 5, Dark Jedi Encounter. 3 years later, 7035. Daimon, age, 20. After deciding not to take Eiko as a Padawan learner, the Jedi Council gave Daimon another Padawan. This time he didn't have any bad visions about them, nor did he sense any darkness surrounding them. Her name was Sira, a young Mirialan with a keen interest in the same path Daimon had chosen. Despite how young she was, Daimon could see that she had an immense potential to be a Jedi Sentinel. Daimon took her under his wing and began to guide her along her journey and teach her the knowledge that he had. Sira was eager to learn and quick on her feet, surprisingly adaptable even for a Jedi in training. After 3 years of training, she was now 15 years old, and she was already proving herself to be a competent combatant under Daimon's guidance and showed promise as a negotiator too. Daimon had already mastered all 7 forms of saber combat and was using that knowledge to create his own style of combat, combining the greatest advantages of each form into a single refined form that would suit his individual needs. This combination technique was something he was passing on to Sira, who was having trouble learning the form because of how complex it was, so instead he decided to create a different version of the form so that she could still learn a more refined technique. In doing so, Sira developed a comprehensive fighting style that was fluid and unpredictable. She wielded her proto-saber as if it was an extension of her own body, flowing from one form to another with grace and ease. During their training sessions, Sira often asked Daimon about his past experiences and his struggles, which he shared by using the stories of his early days as an initiate and his life on his home planet. He sought to instill in her the understanding that growth came with patience and courage, guiding her not just as a Jedi Knight but as a mentor and friend. On Katata, Daimon and Sira had arrived on the planet, on a mission which involved investigating the rumors of a dark Jedi on the planet. Immediately upon arrival, Daimon felt a dark presence somewhere on the planet, but he couldn't pinpoint its location. "Do you sense that, Sira?" Daimon asked, trying to see if Sira could also sense the dark presence. "Yes, Master, it's vague and distant but feels cold," she replied as she tried to concentrate on the source of the presence. "Be on your guard," Daimon instructed, "this presence might be the person we're looking for. We must tread very carefully." Walking through the city streets of Katata, Daimon and Sira navigated the bustling marketplaces and narrow alleyways, their cloaks blending into the crowd. The city was bright, colorful, and alive with the hum of commerce. Yet beneath that lively surface, Daimon could feel the disturbance in the force gnawing at him like a shadow. The presence he felt was subtle, but persistent. It was like an itch in the back of his mind that wouldn't go away. The force was telling him that something was wrong, but he couldn't quite place what it was yet. "Stay close, Sira. Trust your instincts. If this person is the Dark Jedi we've been sent to find, we need to be prepared for anything," Daimon said. Sira nodded, her expression serious as she walked by his side. Although she had trained hard, and her abilities were sharp, she still lacked the experience that Daimon had. This mission would be a test of both her combat skills and her ability to stay calm under pressure. Their journey took them to the outskirts of the city, where the towering spires gave way to quieter, more isolated areas. There, hidden behind the layers of buildings and underground, they came upon a series of abandoned warehouses. The coldness in the air intensified, and Daimon knew they were getting closer. The buildings were old, probably abandoned years ago. The robes they wore did little to ward off the chill that they felt as they continued towards the abandoned structures. "Sira," Daimon whispered, his voice barely heard above the whistling wind, "stay right behind me." She nodded and drew her proto-saber from her side, not igniting it yet but ready to do so at a moment's notice. Daimon did the same, wanting to be ready for anything that popped up. Normally one would not draw their proto-saber considering the Jedi Order wanted it to be used as a last resort. Daimon thought otherwise and made sure to teach his Padawan the same. It was better to be prepared to defend one's life than to lose it without a fight. Carefully, they entered the deepest warehouse. The smell of dampness and decay filled their noses as they could hear echoes of dripping water from far within. But there was also something else, a presence that sent ice through their veins. As they ventured further inside the warehouse, Daimon felt an overwhelming wave of dark power. "So," a voice said echoing around the room, "the Jedi have arrived." Daimon's grip on his saber tightened, his senses on high alert. The voice was deep, almost melodic, but there was a sinister edge to it. Sira looked at him, her expression showing the unease she felt. She hadn't been in many direct confrontations with the dark side yet, and Daimon could see the subtle tremor in her hand. Still, her stance remained firm. "I take it you know who we are," Daimon called back. Their mission was to find the Jedi who had fallen to the dark side and bring them back to the temple if it was at all possible. "If you're the one we've been hearing about, then know that our goal is to help you." "Help me?" the voice echoed, seeming to surround them from all directions. A figure then slowly stepped from the shadows, his face obscured by a hooded cloak. "The road to hell is paved with good intentions, Jedi Knight," the figure spat. "The Order says good things, but in the end, they are blinded by their own ideals. If the Order truly wielded its power, the Republic, no, the galaxy could be at the palm of our hands, and nothing would be able to stop us." Daimon's eyes narrowed, his grip tightening around the hilt of his proto-saber as the Dark Jedi slowly emerged from the shadows. The cold air seemed to intensify around him, swirling with an intense oppressive darkness. This was the first time that Daimon would face a Dark Jedi. This was a man who had once been a Jedi, yet had fallen far into darkness, convinced that his path was the only way forward. "You speak of ideals," Daimon said, his voice calm but firm, "but it's your choices that have led you to this. Blind the Jedi may be, but they believe in hope, in redemption." He took a slow step forward, his eyes never leaving the hooded figure. "You don't have to walk this path." The figure's laugh was dark, almost maniacal. "Redemption? Hope?" The Dark Jedi's voice hissed with disdain, his eyes glowing faintly from within the shadows of his hood. "You Jedi are all the same. Full of empty words and weak promises." He stepped closer, his presence in the Force becoming more oppressive with each movement as the darkness thickened around them. "You think you can save me? You think you can stop this?" He ignited his proto-saber, which cast a red glow in the surrounding area. Daimon didn't flinch. Igniting his own proto-saber, a blue blade which was the same one he had since his Padawan days. Behind the Dark Jedi, shadowy figures began to emerge, all clad in similar dark robes, their eyes glowing with malice. Daimon immediately recognized them as followers, Dark Jedi who had chosen the same twisted path as their leader. Sira's grip on her proto-saber tightened, her stance shifting into one of readiness. Daimon could feel her nervousness, but she didn't back down. Her training had prepared her for moments like this, even if this was the first time she had been confronted by such overwhelming darkness. "Sira," Daimon said quietly, never taking his eyes off the leader, "stay close. Trust yourself and trust me. We fight together." The Dark Jedi's mouth twisted into a grin. "How touching," he sneered, "but you're already outmatched. The Jedi were weak when I left them, and now the darkness has only made me stronger." Without warning, the first of the Dark Jedi followers lunged at them, his proto-saber flickering to life as he swung at Daimon's side. Daimon was quick, sidestepping the attack and parrying the next strike. His blade danced in the air as he executed a counterattack, his form flowing like water, graceful but deadly. But his movements were not without purpose, each strike was calculated to create openings for Sira, to give her space to engage and grow. He'd taught her the importance of balance, of timing, and now he would put that teaching to the test. Despite their current situation, Daimon saw this as a good opportunity to test what he had been teaching her for the past few years. Sira reacted immediately, taking advantage of the opening Daimon had created. She moved with lightning speed, her proto-saber flowing in a series of unpredictable angles that left her opponent with little room to recover. He tried to block, but Sira was relentless. Meanwhile, the Dark Jedi leader turned toward Daimon, his eyes filled with fury. "You really think your training is enough to stand against me?" He raised his hand, sending a violent surge of force lightning toward Daimon. The blue streaks of energy arced through the air like venomous snakes. Daimon reacted in an instant. He twisted his wrist and raised his proto-saber, creating a barrier in the force that absorbed the energy, deflecting the lightning away from his body. The Dark Jedi's eyes flashed with anger. "You'll regret defying me, Jedi." With a sudden burst of speed, he closed the distance, his proto-saber flashing with deadly intent. Daimon was ready. Their blades met and the sound of their struggle spread throughout the warehouse. The Dark Jedi moved with relentless aggression, each strike filled with the fury of his fallen soul. His blade was fast and vicious, designed not for defense, but for offense. He was determined to break through Daimon's defense, to prove that he was stronger than Daimon. Daimon, though, was ready. His movements were sharp and calculated, each parry pushing back against the onslaught. His experience and training allowed him to read his opponent's intentions, to anticipate each move and counter with precision. Yet, as they fought, Daimon could feel the Dark Jedi's power growing. "Stay focused, Sira," Daimon called, his voice rising above the clash of proto-sabers. "Don't let him break your resolve and training, stay focused," he yelled out. Despite some thinking that this might distract her from her fight, he would likely disagree, as if she can listen to his words while maintaining focus, then that would show that he was training her well. Sira, her brow wrinkled in concentration, moved to intercept one of the other Dark Jedi followers who had attempted to flank Daimon. With a swift turn of her proto-saber, she deflected a powerful strike and countered with a rapid series of slashes, her movements graceful but deadly. Her blade flashed in the dim light, forcing the Dark Jedi to retreat in a flurry of sparks. But the leader was not finished. His eyes glinted with malevolent energy as he raised his hands again. This time, a more sinister dark wave rippled through the air, reaching out to envelop them in a shroud of suffocating darkness. The force itself seemed to warp around him, bending to his will. "Now you will see the true power of the dark side," he bellowed, the air around him crackling with dark energy. His eyes flared with an unnatural glow as he unleashed a full-force push toward Daimon and Sira, sending them both stumbling backward. Sira cried out as she was thrown against a stack of crates, but she quickly regained her footing, gritting her teeth and pushing herself back into the fight. Daimon, however, began channeling the force within him, and with a swift motion, he summoned a powerful burst of energy that met the Dark Jedi's wave head-on, forcing his followers to the ground as they were overwhelmed by the sheer force that Daimon had released. The warehouse trembled as the two forces collided, shaking the very foundations of the building. For a moment, it was as though time had slowed, the raw power of the Dark Jedi and the disciplined force of Daimon were in a deadlock. "Enough!" Daimon shouted, his voice filled with intensity. With a focused strike, Daimon broke through the Dark Jedi's energy field and leapt toward him, his proto-saber cutting through the oppressive darkness. The Dark Jedi barely had time to react before Daimon's blade found its mark, striking a deep wound across the chest. The leader stumbled back, his proto-saber flickering as he gasped for breath. His eyes, filled with shock and rage, locked onto Daimon one last time. You will regret this," he snarled. Daimon didn't hesitate. With a swift motion, he disarmed the Dark Jedi, sending his proto-saber flying across the room. The man fell to his knees, his hands raised in surrender, but the dark energy around him still pulsed with the rage and despair that had driven him to this point. "You don't have to die," Daimon said, his voice firm yet filled with a trace of compassion. "You can still come back. There's always another way." But the Dark Jedi only sneered. "There is no coming back from this, Jedi. The darkness has already claimed me." With a final, defiant growl, the Dark Jedi reached out, attempting to draw upon the last of his power, to unleash one final act of destruction. But before he could complete the motion, Daimon's blade cut through the air and ended the conflict in a heartbeat. The dark presence faded in an instant, and the warehouse fell eerily silent. The battle was over. But even as he looked down at the fallen Dark Jedi, a gnawing sense of unease lingered in his mind. The threat was ended, but the Dark Jedi's final words echoed in his thoughts. "The darkness has already claimed me." This was the fate that had befallen those claimed by the darkness. While he had seen it many times through a screen, this was his first time seeing it in person. Chapter 6, Paths of the Fallen. The Dark Jedi's followers who had fallen unconscious after being knocked down were promptly arrested by a few Republic agents. The Republic agents were from the Republic Intelligence Agency, RIA, and were in charge of securing the Dark Jedi after Daimon and Sira subdued them and returned them to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, where they would be exiled and banished from the Order. The Jedi Order had a practice of exiling Dark Jedi rather than executing them, as it was believed that killing them would be an act of the dark side itself. Exile served as a way to rid the Order of those who had fallen to the dark side, while also ensuring that they would no longer pose a direct threat to the Jedi. Daimon knew that this was the reason why the Sith had become a thing, because the Jedi allowed them to go free without any major penalties or measures to alleviate their descent into darkness. As he watched the fallen Jedi being taken away, he was thinking about how he could try and get the Order to change how they deal with fallen Jedi. Right now, he was just a Jedi Knight who held no real weight within the Order besides his accomplishments and popular reputation within the Republic. If he wanted to make important decisions, he would have to reach the rank of Master first and join the Jedi Council. If that didn't work, then he would shoot for becoming the Grand Master of the Jedi Order. Jedi Knights are highly respected for their skills in the Force, combat abilities, and wisdom, however they did not possess the same level of authority as Jedi Masters. A Jedi Knight's primary role is to carry out the tasks assigned by the Jedi Council or Jedi Masters, often in the field. Knights did not make the high-level decisions that shaped the Order or its philosophy. However, all of this was based on how long he planned to stay in the Order. As of now, his plan was to build a good reputation for his future and become a powerful/influential figure within the Jedi Order and the Republic. Either before or after he achieved this, he would leave the Order and walk his own path within the galaxy. He wanted to stay in the Order for as long as he could stand it, even if it was holding him back, but if some major event happened that made him upset with the Order, then he would not hesitate to leave. Sira approached him. "Are you okay, Master?" she asked, her gaze falling on the fallen Dark Jedi leader. "I'm fine," he assured her. "What about you? How was your first encounter with a Jedi who have fallen to the dark side?" Sira looked down at the prone body. "I never thought I would see a Jedi turn like that." Daimon nodded, not surprised by her reaction. This was one of the harsh realities of the Jedi life during this time period. It was 35 years before the 100-year darkness began, and by the way things were looking, Daimon could already see things riling up within the Order. This is a path some may take when they succumb to their fears, hatred, or even their ambitions, he replied. "I'll say this, Sira, while the Jedi may try to walk the path they think is right, I believe that limiting people from making their own choices only makes the darkness more appealing. They believe their way is the only way, but in the end, all that leads to is more restrictions and control. Emotions are part of any person's experience, and the inability to express or process them can create significant internal conflict." Sira turned to him, her eyes still filled with questions. "So, you think the Jedi are wrong? That we should let others develop emotions?" Daimon took a deep breath and let the words hang in the air for a moment before responding. This was an increasingly difficult topic to talk about, especially with his Padawan who grew up learning nothing but the Jedi Code. But he wanted to start planting the seeds for change within the Order, starting with his Padawan. "I'm not saying we should abandon the Jedi Code or let chaos reign, Sira. What I mean is that the Jedi's refusal to acknowledge the role of emotions, all emotions, leads to problems we often don't address. Denying someone the right to feel, to live through their emotions, is dangerous. It creates pressure, and eventually, that pressure will either crack the person or push them towards something darker." He paused, turning his gaze to the horizon. The transport ships carrying the arrested Dark Jedi were lifting off in the distance. "I think," he continued, "that the Jedi need to learn how to manage their emotions, not suppress them. You can feel anger, fear, love, and grief, but you can't let those feelings control you. The Jedi talk about balance, but their teachings have created a culture of avoidance. If we don't face our emotions, we risk falling into something darker, something far more dangerous." Sira nodded, understanding her master's words and way of thinking. From her 3 years of being with him, she had learned a lot about her master. While he sticks to the Jedi code, he tries to sometimes go about things in a different way if he could help out. He also was so much different from her instructor she was under as she was growing up. She wondered just how different the order would be if her master's way of thinking was more common. Perhaps they would have less dark Jedi or none at all. She thought about this as they walked back to their own ship. Once on board, Daimon had contacted the Jedi Council to give a report about his mission. Within one of the rooms of the ship, Daimon sat in the small, dimly lit room, while in front of him, the 4 members of the Jedi Council appeared over the holographic projection. Jedi Knight Daimon, Master Talia's voice rang out. "Your mission has been a success, I assume?" questioned Master Talia. "Yes, the Dark Jedi and his followers have been dealt with. Unfortunately, the Dark Jedi himself was too powerful to subdue peacefully, but I did manage to knock out his followers who are already being transported by RIA agents to the temple," reported Daimon. Master Talia nodded. "That is good to hear. You have carried out your duty with professionalism, Daimon. You and your Padawan are to be commended." Daimon nodded, accepting her words despite what he actually thought on the matter. Master Sarin, his face stern as ever, spoke next. "Exile is the only solution for those who fall to the dark side, Daimon. There is no place in the order for those who have strayed so far from the light. The Jedi Code is clear on this. Their exile ensures that they will not be a threat again." "Or so you think," said Daimon in his head. He was the only one who knew what was to become of this action and how it would affect the galaxy for the next thousands of years. "I understand, Master Sarin, but I think that we should attempt to bring them back to the path of the light." "Exile should not be the only solution," responded Daimon. He wanted to see how each master would react to his words, which would give him a little insight into who he could attempt to persuade into believing that his point of view could work. Master Belger, the oldest of the council members, nodded thoughtfully at Daimon's words. "It is a difficult topic you raise, Jedi Knight Daimon. A Jedi's fall to the dark side is always a tragedy. Your perspective on this subject is unique." "Unique or not," interjected Master Tyro, "it is against the Jedi Code. We do not negotiate nor reason with those who have given in to the dark side. They are lost." Master Tyro and Sarin were against the idea and showed utter disdain for the thought, while Master Belger and Talia were relatively thoughtful about the idea. So, he could possibly influence at least 2 of them to believe what he was saying, but that left 8 other members of the Jedi Council whom he would need to test and see their reaction to his proposal. "I understand, Masters. I only wished to open the conversation of seeing another path that we could take," stated Daimon. Master Talia offered him a soft but thoughtful nod. "We appreciate your conviction, Jedi Knight. You are dedicated to the Order, and we see that. But this is a delicate matter. We will deliberate further on this matter you have brought up." Daimon gave a respectful bow. "Thank you, Master Talia." The holographic images of the council members disappeared, leaving Daimon alone in the small room. The more he thought about things, the more plans that began to develop in his head. Not just about the Order, but about other things such as starting a corporation, which he couldn't do until he left the Jedi Order because it was forbidden for any Jedi to own any corporation, business, or even pursue wealth for personal gain. However, he had another way around that. Once he completed building Cortana, he would task her with creating a secret account where she would legally procure funds, invest, alongside other things while Daimon is in the Jedi Order. She would be extremely important for when he left the Order and allow him to have a substantial amount of money once he got out. Chapter 7, A Resolution. On the RSV Luminous Accord, Jedi Knight Shrimi and her Padawan, Vin, stood on the bridge, gazing out at the expanse of stars through the ship's viewport. The vessel traveled through hyperspace, its destination a troubled mining colony on the moon of Arbitas 7. Tensions between the colony's administration and its laborers had escalated into strikes and scattered violence. The Galactic Republic had called upon the Jedi Order to mediate the conflict, and Shrimi was sent as a representative of the Order. Her reputation as a Jedi consular, able to defuse even the most volatile disputes with her unparalleled empathy, made her one of the top choices. Shrimi was calm as she stood on the bridge wearing her Jedi robes, a deep green accented with cream, matched the harmony she sought to bring to others. Her lekku, adorned with subtle gold markings, rested lightly over her shoulders. She clasped her hands behind her back as she stared into the visual of hyperspace. Her Padawan, Vin, a Togruta barely into his teenage years, shifted restlessly beside her. "Master," he said, breaking the silence, "do you think they'll even listen? The reports said the miners have threatened to blockade the spaceports. That doesn't sound like they're ready to talk." Shrimi glanced at him. "There is anger, yes," she said softly. "But anger often masks pain, and beneath pain lies a story. If we listen closely enough, Vin, we can hear that story and help them write a new one." Her words, though soothing, couldn't entirely dispel his doubts. "But what if their anger turns on us?" he asked. Shrimi smiled faintly and turned to face him fully. "That's always a possibility, my young apprentice. But the Force will guide us, as it always does." Vin nodded, though the uncertainty in his gaze lingered. The luminous accord exited hyperspace, and the moon of Arbitas 7 came into view, its surface filled with lights and dark craters. Shrimi stepped forward, as the ship's communications officer announced the incoming hail from the colony. "Jedi Knight Shrimi of the Galactic Republic," she said as the COMM link activated, "we come in peace to mediate and find a path forward for your people." A gruff voice responded, tinged with suspicion. "We'll see about that, Jedi. Don't expect a warm welcome planet-side. People here don't trust the Republic anymore." Shrimi closed her eyes briefly, reaching out with the Force. The man's voice carried frustration and mistrust, but deeper than that, she felt a yearning for resolution. "We understand your skepticism," she said, "but we're not here to take sides. We're here to listen, to understand, and to help find a way that benefits all." The line went silent for a moment, then came the begrudging response, "Land at the main port. But tread carefully, Jedi." Shrimi turned to Vin, her expression thoughtful. "This will be a delicate mission," she said. "Stay close, observe, and trust in the Force. It will show us the way." As the luminous accord descended toward the lunar surface, Shrimi reached out through the Force, her empathy brushing against the lives below. Each soul was a thread in the tapestry of the Force, and she was determined to weave those threads together into harmony. Vin watched his master with awe. He had seen her abilities many times before, how her understanding and compassion could disarm even the most hardened hearts. Yet, each time, it seemed no less miraculous. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but Shrimi remained steadfast. Where others saw anger and chaos, she saw the potential for unity. And with her Padawan by her side, she would show how they can bring the light of the Jedi to even the darkest corners of the galaxy. As the luminous accord descended through the atmosphere, the mining colony's sprawling complex came into view, a mix of towering industrial structures, scattered housing units, and clusters of people gathering in the streets below. Fires from makeshift barricades dotted the colony's outskirts, casting an uneasy glow against the dull grey of the moon's surface. Sitting down in her seat as the ship's landing thrusters engaged, Shrimi shifted her focus to the inhabitants of the planet. Through the Force, she could feel the emotions of the colony, emotions thick with frustration, despair, and determination. But beneath the turmoil, there were faint whispers of hope, fragile and fleeting. Vin, sitting beside her, felt the same thing. "Master, I can feel their anger. It's everywhere," he said. "Good, Vin. That means you're listening. But anger is not the whole picture. It is a reaction, not a truth. Look deeper." He closed his eyes, trying to focus as she had taught him. Slowly, his breathing steadied, and his perception widened. "There's fear, he said finally. Fear of losing everything. Shrimi nodded, pleased. Exactly. Fear often drives anger. If we can understand what they fear, we can help them move past it. The shuttle door hissed open, a blast of cool dry air greeted them. Waiting at the base of the ramp was a delegation from the colony, 2 administrators in uniforms, flanked by a pair of armed guards. Behind them, a crowd of miners stood at a distance, their faces hard and suspicious. The lead administrator, a tall human with a tight expression, stepped forward. I'm Administrator Varric. You must be the Jedi the Republic sent. His tone suggested more skepticism than gratitude. Shrimi inclined her head respectfully. I am Jedi Knight Shrimi, and this is my Padawan, Vin. We're here to facilitate a peaceful resolution to your conflict. Peaceful resolution, Varric repeated, his tone flat. If only it were that simple. These miners don't want resolution, they want demands met that are beyond reason. Before Shrimi could respond, a voice shouted from the crowd. Reason? Is starving our families reasonable? The speaker, a burly Twi'lek with soot-streaked skin, pushed his way forward. You sit in your cushy offices while we work ourselves to death in your mines. The Republic's here for you, not us. The crowd rumbled in agreement, and the tension thickened. Shrimi stepped forward calmly, her hands visible and unthreatening. I hear your anger, she said, her voice carrying over the noise. I feel your pain. And I know your trust in us is fragile. But I promise you this, we are here to listen. Not to impose, not to judge. To listen. The crowd quieted slightly, though wary eyes remained fixed on her. The Twi'lek hesitated, then crossed his arms. Talk's cheap, Jedi. You want us to believe you? Come see the mines for yourself. Shrimi nodded without hesitation. Very well. If seeing your struggle firsthand will help us understand, we will do so. Varric looked alarmed. That's not safe. There's been unrest near the mines, it's no place for diplomats, let alone Jedi. Shrimi turned to him, her gaze steady. Diplomacy requires trust, Administrator. And trust must be earned. If the miners will permit it, we will go. The Twi'lek nodded. Then follow me. As Shrimi and Vin followed the miner through the crowd, Vin whispered, Master, are you sure about this? It feels like a trap. Shrimi smiled faintly, her voice low. Perhaps it is, Vin. Or perhaps it's a chance to show them we are not their enemies. The journey to the mines was somber, the path winding through stark industrial corridors and darkened shafts. As they walked, Shrimi allowed the Force to guide her, reaching out to the lives around her. Each person she passed carried their own story, their own wounds. At the entrance to one of the mines, the Twi'lek stopped. This is it. Where we break our backs for scraps while they get rich off our labor. He gestured to a young girl sitting nearby, her face gaunt and pale. She hasn't eaten in 2 days because the credits dried up. Tell me, Jedi, what's your Republic going to do about that? Shrimi knelt beside the girl, her expression softening. I don't know yet, she admitted. But I promise you, we will find a way. The Twi'lek stared at her, his anger wavering. For the first time, he seemed unsure. Vin watched in awe as his master connected with these strangers, their walls slowly beginning to crumble. This, he realized, was her true power, not her saber skills or even her command of the Force, but her ability to see people as they were and make them feel seen in return. The air in the mine was heavy with dust and tension. As Shrimi rose from where she knelt beside the child, she turned her gaze toward the Twi'lek miner who had guided them. His hard-set face had a flicker of uncertainty, his anger faltering in the presence of her sincerity. What is your name? Shrimi asked gently. The Twi'lek hesitated, then muttered, Terran. Terran, she repeated, her voice soft yet resolute. You speak for many here, but you shouldn't have to carry this burden alone. Let us help. Show us the truth of your struggles so we can make others understand. Terran looked at her for a long moment, then gave a grudging nod. Fine. But don't expect to like what you see. Shrimi motioned for Vin to follow as Terran led them deeper into the mine. The air grew colder, and the hum of machinery reverberated through the narrow tunnels. Workers toiled under dim lights, their movements mechanical and exhausted. Many glanced at the Jedi pair with suspicion, others with quiet desperation. Vin's eyes darted around, taking in every detail, the rusted equipment, the soot-covered faces, the lines of fatigue etched into every figure. He leaned closer to Shrimi. Master, this isn't just anger. It's suffering. Shrimi nodded, understanding what her Padawan was getting at. Yes, Vin. And suffering can be a powerful force. It can divide, or it can unite. Our role is to help them find the latter. Terran stopped abruptly at a collapsed section of the mine. This, he said bitterly, gesturing to the rubble, is what we've been dealing with. Unsafe conditions, outdated equipment, and no reinforcements. That cave-in killed 8 people last month. You think the administrators cared? They told us to clear it ourselves or lose our pay. Those were our friends, our family. Shrimi stepped forward, placing a hand on the jagged rock wall. Her head bowed slightly, and she closed her eyes. Through the force, she could feel the echoes of the disaster, fear, pain, and loss clinging to the space like a shadow. I'm sorry for your loss, Terran, she said, her voice filled with genuine sorrow. No one should have to endure this. Terran's fists clenched, but his anger seemed to waver in the face of her empathy. Words won't fix this, Jedi. Actions will. Shrimi turned to face him fully. And that is why we're here. You've shown us the cost of inaction. Now, we must ensure the administrators, and the Republic see it too. Terran's brow wrinkled, his skepticism still evident. You really think they'll care? They've ignored us for years. They will care, Shrimi said firmly. Because we will make them understand. But I'll need your help to do it. The truth carries weight, and your voice can be the key to change. Terran stared at her, the fire of anger in his eyes dimming, replaced by something else, hope, hesitant but growing. All right, Jedi, he said at last. I'll hold you to that. Shrimi turned to Vin, who had been watching the exchange intently. We've seen enough for now, she said. It's time to return and speak with the administrators. As they retraced their steps through the mine, Vin whispered, Master, do you really think we can make the administrators listen? They seem stubborn. Shrimi smiled faintly. Stubbornness is born from fear, just as anger is. If we can show them that understanding doesn't threaten them but strengthens the whole, we can shift their perspective. When they emerged from the mine, the air outside felt lighter, though the tension still lingered in the crowd. Terran stayed at Shrimi's side as they approached the waiting administrators, who stood near the entrance with guarded expressions. Jedi, Administrator Varric began, his tone sharp. I hope you found your inspection enlightening. But you must see that their demands are impossible to meet, our resources are stretched thin as it is. Shrimi raised a hand, her expression calm but firm. What I saw, Administrator, is a people working under intolerable conditions. This is not about demands, it's about survival. If you wish for peace, you must first show that you value the lives of those who sustain this colony. Varric's jaw tightened, but he didn't immediately respond. Shrimi pressed on. The miners are not your adversaries, Varric. They are your partners. But partnerships require mutual respect and trust, both of which are currently broken. Terran stepped forward, surprising even himself. We don't want a fight, he said, his voice rough but sincere. We just want a chance to live, to provide for our families without dying in the mines. If you're willing to meet us halfway, maybe we can find a way forward. The crowd murmured in agreement, their voices soft but growing. Varric glanced at his advisors, clearly unsettled by the shift in tone. Finally, he sighed. I'll call for a formal mediation. But the Republic will need to support this if it's going to work. Shrumi inclined her head. And I will ensure they do. Together, we will find a path forward. As the tension in the crowd began to ease, Vin felt a spark of admiration for his master. In just a short time, she had turned suspicion into dialogue and anger into hope. Shrimi placed a hand on his shoulder. This is only the beginning, Vin, she said quietly. Diplomacy is a long road, but each step brings us closer to understanding, and understanding brings us closer to peace. And with that, they began their next steps toward reconciliation, guided by the light of the Force. It took a few months, but with the help of the Republic, the colony's administrators and the miners came to an agreement which established the rights of miners on the planet. The Republic would continue to oversee this administration to monitor its progress and actions to see if a similar problem arises. Chapter 8, Cortana's Development. Landing at the Jedi Temple hangar on Coruscant, Daimon was greeted by a few fellow Jedi Knights who were raised within the same clan as him when they were younger. Just came back from a mission, Daimon? Asked one of the knights, a tall man named Irol. Daimon nodded, I did. And as always, it was an enlightening experience, Daimon casually said, though Irol, who knew Daimon well enough from their childhood, knew there was more to it than just that, so he tilted his head slightly for Daimon to elaborate further. We dealt with a dark Jedi and his followers, Daimon began. It was a difficult task, taking them down while attempting to steer them back towards the light, something I am of the opinion that we should be trying to do more frequently. Iron raised an eyebrow at this. I never took you for one pushing for rehabilitation, Daimon, he replied. From when they were little, Daimon was probably the best out of everybody when it came to adhering to the Jedi's principles and rules that were established, while barely questioning anything. So, to hear him say something like this was a little shocker. I'm not sure it's rehabilitation so much as it's about our failure to address emotions, Daimon replied. We teach people to suppress their feelings, and when that suppression doesn't work, well, we've all seen what happens. His words hung in the air as it really got the other knights thinking. Irol had thought about it for a few seconds, trying to look at it from various perspectives before he spoke. Your methods are definitely not what the majority think or want, Daimon, he confessed. But perhaps that's not a bad thing. This was something he had expected from Irol. The man had always been open to new ideas and ways of thinking in their youth. It reassured Daimon somewhat that maybe some Jedi Knights would be open to his way of approaching things, but not enough. The council members still held the highest authority, and without persuading them, Daimon dismissed the thought for now. The council could wait. There were other things that he wanted to do. After talking with his fellow knights for a few more minutes, Daimon dismissed his Padawan and returned to his personal quarters. The living space was modest, decorated lightly with small tokens of his many missions. His mind immediately wandered back to the project that he had already spent countless hours on when he had time to spare, the creation of Cortana. He had invested hundreds of hours into studying artificial intelligence, advanced holocron archives, ancient texts, and collaborating with a Republic engineer who is a Kalumi. The Kalumi are one of the oldest sentient species in the galaxy. They are easily recognized by their large heads, which made up over one-third of their approximately 1.75-meter height, and their vestigial arms and legs. They are a highly evolved bipedal species who joined the Republic thousands of years ago and generally have great inventions and technology that are overlooked. For Daimon, they were the perfect species that he could utilize to create a super-advanced AI. And not only that, but they also had advanced knowledge on cloning, which would be very useful in the future. The Kalumi named Mazik had proven indispensable in his project. Despite his delicate nature and peculiar appearance, Mazik possessed a level of brilliance that was extraordinary, even among his species. His fascination with Daimon's project and interest in artificial intelligence made him the ideal collaborator. Another thing that he used was the Force, which would imbue Cortana with the Force to enhance her awareness and sensitivity. A Force-integrated Cortana will have a higher level of precognitive insight similar to Force-sensitive beings. This would allow her to anticipate outcomes, navigate dangers, or provide tactical advice with near-perfect accuracy. Next would be heightened data processing, which would combine Cortana's computational speed with the Force's ability to feel the underlying flow of events, enhancing its ability to interpret and analyze information beyond pure logic. Force integration would imbue Cortana with an understanding of living beings' emotions and suffering, fostering empathy and creating a moral compass to guide her decisions. Essentially, Daimon would use the Force alongside other parameters, to try and create the Cortana that he had in his memory and to make up for the fact that he couldn't flash clone somebody to make Cortana like Halsey did. Cortana was made up of her combined intelligence and flash-cloned brain. That method was beyond Daimon's reach right now and would require unimaginable expertise. However, using the Force to create an AI like Cortana was more possible than the latter. After completing a mission, he always had a few weeks, sometimes months before his next major mission that took him off-planet. In the meantime he was assigned a few local missions that kept him on Coruscant. So as the days passed, turning into weeks, Daimon began incorporating the various bits of knowledge he had gained from Mazik and his own study. He balanced his training with Sira, meditation, and the usual duties of a Jedi Knight, while also devoting immeasurable time to the Cortana project. The progress was slow, and there were occasional setbacks that frustrated him to no end, but he could feel Cortana begin to take shape bit by bit. He created a central core processor made up of kyber crystals that he acquired on one of his missions. The kyber crystals would make it easier for the core processor to resonate with the Force when combined with other advanced metals such as durasteel and frick. The neural framework was built to mimic an organic brain, using quantum computing to create an adaptive and self-learning AI. After this was a holomatrix design which would allow for projecting the AI as a holographic avatar, similar to Cortana's representation. The power source for the central core processor was small kyber crystal shard that would serve as both a power source and a medium for Force connection, amplifying the AI's ability to interact with the Force. Her core intelligence would be built on a combination of Jedi knowledge, from the archives, and other advanced technologies such as slicing algorithms, droid personalities, and military-grade processors. To ensure adaptability, she would have heuristic programming, enabling her to learn and evolve dynamically. Cortana's neural framework would be integrated with the Force-attuned kyber crystal, creating a unique synergy between technology and the Force. This process would allow Cortana to sense Force energies, perceive intentions, or even gain limited precognitive abilities. It wouldn't be the first time that technology and the Force were integrated with each other, as the ancient Rakata did it over 20,000 years ago. But ever since their collapse, integration between technology and the Force was a rare thing to see in the galaxy. Since the core was imbued with his Force energy, dark side corruption was near impossible, since Daimon had worked hard during his time in the Order to make his Force energy reflect a balance between both sides, allowing the use of both light and dark side abilities without being corrupted. And just like that, time flew, as 5 months had passed since returning from taking down the Dark Jedi and his followers. Contrary to what Daimon suggested, the Jedi were exiled from the Order and Republic space, which basically would allow them to continue their practice of the dark side, only far away from the Order. The Council had deemed it a waste of resources to try and guide those who fell to the dark side back to the light. For Daimon, this decision was expected, since this method had been something that the Jedi had been doing for thousands of years, and changing it based off what one person said would not be the wise thing to do. They saw it as easier to just exile the Dark Jedi away from the Order. He was the only one who knew just how this decision would come to bite not just the Council but the entire Jedi Order in the ass in the future. Putting that matter aside, Daimon was asked to go to the headquarters of the Republic Intelligence Agency to help them with investigating a corrupt senator. After grabbing Sira, who was meditating after her training, they took a civilian shuttle to their destination. As he set foot inside the headquarters of the Republic Intelligence Agency, he was reminded of a quote he remembered from his previous life: "In politics, nothing happens by accident. If it happens, you can bet it was planned that way." It was a quote by U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt during his time in office. Greeting them at the front as they walked in was Lieutenant Khan, a stern-faced Twi'lek with broad shoulders and sharp, perceptive eyes. He wore the uniform of the intelligence agency with a sense of pride and duty. "Lieutenant Khan," Daimon greeted, giving the man a respectful nod. "I presume you already have some leads on the senator's case." "Indeed, Knight Daimon," Lieutenant Khan greeted back, gesturing to follow him towards his office. "This way." Sira and Daimon followed the lieutenant into his office as they were briefed on what the intelligence agency had gathered so far on the senator. Chapter 9, The Black Hand. A/N, just for clarification, Daimon is a Jedi, but his appearance isn't like the Shrek-looking ones we see on Wikipedia. Instead he looks more like Thanos and their race of Titans from the Marvel Universe. So when you think of Daimon, just think of Thanos. Sitting down in Lieutenant Khan's office, Daimon and Sira was briefed on what they had so far. "As of now, we are investigating various financial discrepancies tied to the senator's office," the lieutenant started, presenting hollow projections of numerous bank accounts, investment portfolios, and property records. "There seems to be a significant amount of money going into off-world accounts that can't be accounted for or justified by his salary. It points towards potential bribery and under-the-table dealings." As he talked, Daimon listened attentively while also using the Force to subtly probe for any hidden intentions or deception within Lieutenant Khan. The Force didn't indicate anything out of the ordinary except for a general concern for the Republic's well-being. Looking at the transactions, he wasn't that knowledgeable when it came to financial affairs and intricacies, but even to him, the numbers and patterns looked suspiciously irregular. The money flows lacked the usual consistency of a government-operated system and instead had the haphazard appeal of personal transactions or unofficial deals. "Who could the senator be dealing with?" Sira asked, leaning forward to better examine the hollow images. "That's where you come in," Lieutenant Khan replied, his eyes on Daimon. "We've detected several encrypted communications from the senator's office to unknown contacts. The encryption is advanced, far beyond our code breakers' abilities." Daimon raised an eyebrow at that. Even the Republic code breakers couldn't get anything, which meant that now they were turning to the Jedi to use the Force to try and solve this case. In his opinion, this was smart considering how the Jedi who practice technical fields are probably better than even the Republic code breakers because of their connection with the Force. Daimon himself, who was a sentinel, had spent almost 100 hours learning code breaking in his spare time. Given his enhanced intelligence and abilities, breaking into the senator's encrypted messages was possible. Nodding thoughtfully, Daimon leaned back in his chair, folding his hands on his lap. "I'll take a look at these encrypted messages. It might shed some light on who the senator is in ties with." Lieutenant Khan presented a data disk containing the encrypted files. "Here you go, Knight Daimon. We've been trying to crack these for weeks now." Daimon took the disk and slid it into the data port on the console beside him, the encrypted files immediately appearing on the screen in front of him. The layers of encryption seemed daunting at first glance. Each line of code was a carefully constructed barrier, designed to thwart even the most experienced hacker. But for Daimon, these barriers were just another puzzle, one he was more than capable of solving. His fingers hovered over the keys, tapping into the Force to augment his focus. The world around him seemed to fade as he concentrated, his mind sharpening, moving with a speed and clarity that far surpassed ordinary human capability. He felt the code, the pattern of it, the rhythm of the encryption. It was as though the code itself whispered to him, revealing its secrets. Sira and Lieutenant Khan watched in silence, both knowing that Daimon's skills were more than just a product of training, they were enhanced by his connection to the Force. The seconds stretched into minutes as Daimon worked, his hands moving with fluid precision. "Done," he said quietly. The encrypted messages had been cracked open, the strings of code unraveling like a tapestry. The screen flickered, revealing the contents of the decrypted files, communications between the senator and a series of contacts, some of them from known criminal organizations in the core worlds. There were encrypted references to illegal arms deals, smuggling operations, and even hints of more unsavory dealings, including a few coded references to a mysterious Black Hand. Cyril leaned in. The Black Hand? That's not a name I've heard in a long time. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Khan's expression darkened at the mention of the Black Hand. The Black Hand is a shadow organization with ties to multiple criminal syndicates. They've been linked to everything from weapons trafficking to assassination contracts. If the senator is involved with them. He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Daimon looked further at the information. We'll need to dig deeper into these contacts. The senator is clearly playing a dangerous game. Sierra nodded. But if we're going after these people, we'll need to be careful. The Black Hand is notorious for its secrecy and ruthlessness. If they sense we're onto them, they'll vanish without a trace, or worse. The Black Hand wasn't a name to be taken lightly. But this case was bigger than just a simple investigation into a corrupt politician. It was about protecting the Republic from unseen threats that were lurking in the shadows. I agree, Daimon said, we'll need a plan. But first, we should investigate the senator's immediate circle. If he's being manipulated or controlled by these criminal factions, we need to find out how deep it goes. Wait a minute, interrupted Lieutenant Khan. The RIA will take lead on this and we will provide whatever resources needed to investigate the Black Hand, while also conducting our own investigations. Daimon had no problem with this. In fact, it was better to have them involved so he could have a lot of support to lean on. But there was also the possibility that somebody within the RIA was also working with the Black Hand. Considering their infamous reputation, the possibility was highly likely, and this investigation would certainly make those individuals become a target. We'll keep in close contact then, Light Daimon stated as he and Sierra left Lieutenant Khan's office. This was no longer just about uncovering corruption, it was about stopping some secret organization from seeking its fangs into the Republic. Walking through the halls of the agency, there was a brief silence as Daimon threw about what they should go after first. Sierra was the first to speak and break that silence. You think the senator's really involved with the Black Hand, or is it just a smokescreen to throw us off track? I don't know, but I don't like the fact that his communications are tied to criminal organizations that deal in high-stakes operations. The Black Hand doesn't do small-time work. Daimon replied. You've got a point, Sierra agreed, her voice filled with concern. They're notorious for keeping their operations under the radar, but the senator's name being linked to them? That could mean we're looking at a much larger web than we thought. With his connection to the Force, Daimon felt that there might be something darker pulling the strings behind the scenes. We need to find out who the senator's working with. The sooner we do that, the better we can figure out how to dismantle this operation. Sierra nodded. I'll start by tracking down his personal contacts. If there's anyone we can interrogate or who might know more, it's them. We'll see what we can learn from the people closest to him. Good, Daimon said, I'll head to the lower levels of Coruscant. If the Black Hand is involved, we may need to trace some of the more illegal movements, smuggling routes, hidden transactions. I'll see if the Force can guide me to where they're operating from. The two exchanged a brief nod before parting ways. Daimon made his way toward the nearest turbo lift, his mind already thinking of their next steps. Coruscant, the beating heart of the Republic, was teeming with information, but finding the right thread to pull in such a vast cityscape was always a challenge. And now, with an intricate conspiracy on his hands, the pressure was on. The turbolift doors slid open, and Daimon stepped into the bustling depths of Coruscant's underbelly. The lower levels were a stark contrast to the gleaming spires of the upper city, dimly lit alleyways, shadowed figures lurking in the corners, and the smell of industrial waste clinging to the air. It was here that the Republic's underworld thrived, far from the eyes of the Senate and its oversight. Daimon's senses were heightened, his mind already attuned with the Force. He walked through the crowded streets, feeling the weight of the darkness around him. The criminal elements of the lower levels were a matter that the Republic generally avoided until something major happened that prompted them to get involved. He reached a cantina, its flashing neon sign barely visible through the haze of smog and pollution that clung to the area. Inside, the chatter of patrons was drowned out by the music and the clinking of glasses. The cantina was filled with shady figures, smugglers, mercenaries, and low-level criminals all looking to avoid the Republic's watchful eye. Daimon approached the bar, his gaze scanning the room as he ordered a drink. Moments later, a man slid into the seat next to him. He was wearing a long, weathered cloak, and his face was hidden by the shadows, but Daimon could feel something peculiar about him. The man wasn't there by coincidence. "You're looking for answers," the man said, his voice low, as if he had been speaking in hushed tones for his whole life. Daimon didn't turn to face him, but his eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" "Doesn't matter," the man replied, his smile unseen but evident in his voice. "What matters is what you're willing to pay for what you need." Daimon paused for a moment, weighing the man's words. He reached out with the force to probe for deception. There was no malice, no ulterior motive, but the man was well versed in hiding his true intentions. He could be connected to the underworld somehow. "I'm looking for information on a senator," Daimon said slowly. "The one from Corellia. He's tied to a group called the Black Hand. You know anything about that?" "The Black Hand?" he repeated, more to himself than to Daimon. "Dangerous people. You don't just ask about them unless you've got a death wish." Daimon's expression remained unchanged, though inside he was prepared for whatever came next. "I'm not asking. I'm investigating." The man slid a small data chip across the counter to Daimon. "This'll get you started. But be warned, Jedi. You dig too deep into the Black Hand, and you might not get out of the hole you're digging." Daimon didn't take the data chip immediately. Instead, he stared at the man for a long moment, considering his words. Finally, he slid the chip into his pocket and stood up. "I don't intend to go quietly." He walked out of the cantina and back into the murky streets. The man he was talking to had a mischievous smile on his face as he disappeared out of existence while muttering, "This should be exciting." Chapter 10, Jedi Killer. On the data chip given to him by the unknown man, there was information regarding various criminal organizations and their locations on numerous planets within the Republic. There were a few on Coruscant and dozens more spread throughout other planets within the core worlds, mid-rim worlds, and the handful of planets that the Republic colonized within the Outer Rim. He sent the other locations alongside any relevant information back to Lieutenant Khan, while he planned to investigate the criminal organizations located on Coruscant. The first location marked on the data chip was an underground gambling facility hidden beneath a decrepit warehouse. A place known only by those who wish to remain unseen by the watchful eyes of Republic law enforcement. Daimon found an inconspicuous spot in a dark alley and quietly surveyed the warehouse. He could hear whispered conversations from inside with the faint sound of music playing. Making his way to the entrance, he encountered two people standing guard at the door who were probably enforcers of sorts for the criminal underworld. Reaching out with the force, he forced them to walk away from entrance for a few minutes, giving him a chance to slip in. Making his way inside, he subtly used the force to mask his presence, easily blending into the crowd of gamblers and other unsavory characters. Earning glances and nods from those who recognized him as another patron looking to try their luck at Sabasi or Pazake. Daimon took a seat in front of a Dejeric board, scanning the crowded room as he played with the holographic creatures. He was looking for a particular person who was the head of a local criminal gang that was on the data chip he was given. It was stated that he liked to hang out in this place for majority of his day, which is why Daimon was here. Across from him, a bulky Duros sat down, his orange eyes looking at Daimon. "Here to play or just window shopping?" he growled. Despite his threatening tone, Daimon sensed no threat from him. "Maybe a bit of both," Daimon replied. The Trandoshan grunted and started the game. Meanwhile, hours had passed since Sira had started her investigation into the upper levels of Coruscant. Her search for the Senator's personal contacts was proving more difficult than she'd anticipated. His network was expansive and well shielded with layers upon layers of bureaucratic red tape placed strategically to cover his tracks. However, she was nothing if not persistent. Cyril looked into the deepest corners of the hollow net, diving through firewalls and navigating complex security systems utilizing the training her master had given her. Eventually, she found one of the senator's former flings whom he had spent years with before he ditched her. Apparently, she was very close to him before she was cast aside after he found someone better than her. Using this opportunity to gather information, she quickly arranged a meeting with the woman under the guise of an interview for an expose on the most influential figures in the Republic. The former flame, a sophisticated and bitter Twi'lek named Lyra, was more than happy to share her experiences with the senator. On his side, Daimon's game of Decorik was coming to a close. Just as he was about to make his move, he spotted a figure entering the room. It was a burly-looking human male with a large scar running down his cheek and surrounded by a number of bodyguards, all of whom were watching their surroundings very carefully. Just from his face alone, Daimon knew this was the person he was looking for. Rak Grunner, the head of a local criminal gang that was connected with the Black Hand. Making his move, Daimon was the Dejarik game against the Duros and got up to walk towards Rak Grunner's table. He was glad that Sira didn't come with him as he could really let loose being surrounded by criminal scum. As he got close to Grunner's table, two bodyguards put their hands up to stop Daimon from getting too close. But as soon as they did this, Daimon force choked the both of them in an instant, causing a commotion. People moved away from their tables, while the other bodyguards drew their blasters. Raising his hand to stop his bodyguards, Grunner spoke. "What are you doing here, Jedi?" he said loudly for all to hear. "A Jedi!" shouted one of the other criminals as he drew his blaster. "Let's kill him so we can get rewarded," another shouted as about a dozen people began to surround Daimon. A normal person wouldn't have even put themselves in this situation, but for Daimon it was different. In front of Sira, he had to act like a mentor and lead her on a path that she could thrive on. While it was only a glimpse, he saw what would happen if she was to follow the same path as him, and it wasn't good. Keeping his hands folded over his chest, Daimon started to laugh at the criminals as they surrounded him with their blasters. They were obviously unaware of who he was, since most of his exploits were only known to those in high positions within the Republic government. Grunner stood up, drawing his own blaster and aimed it at Daimon while asking, "What's so funny, Jedi? You know how much I'm gonna get paid for killing a Jedi? I'm gonna be rich for a long time." As he said this, Daimon felt his finger about to squeeze the trigger of his blaster, forcing him to wait for the shot to be fired and crouch at the last second while slamming his fist on the ground. All the surrounding criminals were force pushed away while one of them was accidentally shot in the head by Grunner. Grunner, who had been slammed into the wall by the force push, had grabbed his head, which hurt from the impact. "And that's why I was laughing," Daimon responded, standing up from his crouched position. "Now tell me how to find the Black Hand and you might live," he threatened. However, Grunner was not budging because of a simple threat. A Jedi wouldn't kill him, but if he revealed information on the Black Hand, then he would be dead in a matter of days with no way of seeing the future. Struggling to sit up, Grunner tried to reach for his blaster only for Daimon to step on his hand, causing him to scream, in pain as the bones in his hand cracked under Daimon's weight. The room was filled with Grunner's cries and the groans of the other criminals. Daimon crouched down near Grunner's face and placed his hand on his head, allowing him to read his memories. This ability was a combination of psychometry and mind probe, allowing to extract information directly from Grunner's mind. Daimon's eyes glowed for a few seconds as he extracted all the memories he needed. As he was doing this, other criminal security forces had already stormed the building and surrounded the place after hearing that a Jedi had started attacking everybody. With them, they brought one of their own Jedi killers, which were people who wore armor resistant to the Force and wielded sonic weapons, which were very useful against Force users because they fired concussive and disruptive sound waves, which were difficult to deflect with a proto-saber. As Daimon finished extracting the information he needed, the backup forces were already storming the room and forming a circle around the area. He already detected them long before they entered the building, but he was still surprised at how fast they were able to respond, which pointed to a strong security system for these criminal hideouts. The Jedi killer stepped forward, wearing his matte black armor carrying a specialized sonic rifle. He pointed the weapon at Daimon without hesitation. "Surrender, Jedi, or be vaporized," he growled behind his mask in a mechanical-like voice which masked his true voice. Daimon stood back up, revealing his true height. Slowly, he cracked his neck, a movement which caused a tense silence as the criminals looked around them. They began to back away cautiously, seeing the other criminals still groaning on the floor from the pain of their broken bones. They didn't see what happened before, and they did not want to find out what nor be on the receiving end of what happened. Yet if they ran, then they would be killed later alongside their families. "Surrender," Daimon replied as he looked at the weapon the Jedi killer had in his hands. For another Jedi, the sonic weapon may have worked, but against him they were useless. "You bring a toy meant for children and think it will save you." The Jedi killer wasted no time with talking and fired. A devastating wave of concentrated sonic energy ripped through the air towards Daimon. But instead of dodging or raising a defense, Daimon simply created a force shield around his body which absorbed the destructive sound wave. The sonic energy disappeared, leaving a stunned Jedi killer who lowered his weapon for a split second in disbelief. This was the first time his weapon had no effect on a Jedi. Normally they would become disorientated with the first hit, leaving the second hit to finally finish them off. But this time the weapon had no effect. The surrounding criminals looked confused and shook that the weapon had no effect. Daimon began to step forward towards the armored enforce. Each step was heavy and deliberate, sending chills down the criminals' spines. "I'm afraid you've misunderstood what kind of being you're dealing with," Daimon said coldly, causing fear to spread throughout the room. 3 criminals tried to run out of the door, but Daimon pulled the door closed, leaving them trapped in there with him. The Jedi killer fired again, and again, 3 rapid shots of sonic energy meant to incapacitate even the most skilled Jedi. But Daimon didn't stop. His force shield remained intact against each sonic attack, which faded into nothing once it made impact. Drawing his proto-saber for the first time since he entered the building, all hell unleashed in the room. Every criminal in the room opened fire on Daimon out of fear for their lives, while seeking cover to avoid being hit by crossfire. The Jedi killer tried to adjust his stance and prepared to fire once more. But before he could pull the trigger, Daimon was already right in front of him. Propelled by both physical prowess and force-enhanced speed, Daimon closed the distance. He effortlessly sliced through the barrel of the sonic rifle, rendering it useless, and then cut the Jedi killer in half. He didn't stop there as he proceeded to massacre every other criminal in the room, ignoring their cries and pleas for mercy. Blaster fire ricocheted off his force shield as Daimon moved throughout the room. One by one, the criminal fell until there were none left. Chapter 11, Emerald Nightfall. While there were no criminals left standing, there were still those that Daimon left alive and only cut off one of their limbs, such as an arm or leg, leaving them screaming and crying on the ground. Ignoring their screams and cries, he pulled out his COMM link, calling his contact within the RIA to come to his location for a cleanup operation. Arriving a few minutes later, a woman had entered the room followed by dozens of other agents to secure the scene. Seeing Daimon standing there while everybody else was on the ground, she walked over to him while shaking her head. "You know, sometimes I wonder how you get yourself in these situations, but then again it's you, so I kind of makes sense," said Commander Arya Kalara, a friendly face that Daimon has seen on numerous occasions since becoming a Jedi Knight. Her main job was shutting down criminal activity within Coruscant, but she occasionally was called by Daimon to perform a cleanup operation after he took down groups of criminals. "Ma'am, I was just minding my business when I was suddenly attacked by these criminals, please you must understand," Daimon jokingly stated, earning a smile from Arya. "Minding your business?" "Yes, of course, Daimon. I always forget how frequently innocent Jedi Knights just happen to stumble into armed criminal hideouts wielding illegal sonic weaponry." Her voice was filled with sarcasm, but her smile showed her amusement. The agents around her began to spread out, securing the area and any evidence that they found. A pair of droids floated in behind them, scanning the remains of the armored Jedi killer. Daimon chuckled softly, "What can I say? Trouble seems to find me, Commander." Turning her attention to their surroundings, Arya crossed her arms as she surveyed the destruction. On the walls she saw the marks where stray blaster bolts had struck and people who were still alive being tended to by her agents before being arrested and taken away for interrogation. Her eyes eventually landed on Grunner, who was being secured by her agents. Daimon hadn't bothered finishing him after extracting what he needed from his mind, as he knew the RIA could gain a lot of information from him. "Who's that one?" she asked, gesturing toward Grunner. "His name is Grunner. He's the leader of a local criminal gang suspected of working either for or with the Black Hand," Daimon explained. Arya's eyebrows shot up at the mention of the Black Hand. "The Black Hand? You really know how to pick your targets, don't you?" she muttered, her tone darkening. The Black Hand was no ordinary criminal syndicate. It was a vast and shadowy organization with its tendrils in every criminal enterprise, from spice smuggling to political assassination across multiple sectors. If Daimon had stumbled upon a connection here on Coruscant, it was more than just bad luck. Daimon shrugged, "It wasn't exactly planned. Grunner just happened to be the one I was looking for," he said as he motioned toward the figure of the crime lord. "But I got what information I needed from him." "I'm sure you did," Arya replied, nodding to her agents to haul Grunner up and restrain him more tightly. He groaned weakly as he couldn't muster up any strength to fight back. The RIA agents slapped binders onto Grunner's wrists and dragged him toward their shuttle. "And do you mind telling me what information you extracted from him?" Arya asked, curious as to what he found so that they can compare the information that they got before they interrogated him to the information after they interrogated him. "Grunner is just one cog in a much larger machine, Arya," he began. "He was laundering credits for the Black Hand, funneling funds through seemingly legitimate businesses here on Coruscant. But that's not the juicy part." Arya tilted her head slightly, crossing her arms as she waited for him to continue. "And what would the juicy part be?" she asked skeptically. "He spoke of a shipment," Daimon said. "A shipment coming in 2 standard days from now. High-value cargo coded Emerald Nightfall." He didn't know exactly what it was, not even where it was being held yet, but he did know where the exchange would happen. The Haskara District docks, Bay 47A. The Haskara district was a notorious hotspot for illicit activity despite, or perhaps because of its proximity to some of Coruscant's wealthiest towers. The docks there were vast and labyrinthine, a perfect location for the Black Hand to operate in the shadows. "Emerald Nightfall," she murmured, the name sounding intriguing. "If it's important enough for the Black Hand to codename it, it's not just your regular shipment of spice or illegal arms. It's something much bigger." Daimon nodded. "That's what I thought. Whatever this is, it could offer us more information on the Black Hand and possibly force them to do something stupid that will start to reveal all the people involved in their little organization." Arya glanced at her agents, who were still working efficiently around them, cataloging weapons, securing survivors, and analyzing anything of value. "Are you already working with the RIA on this case?" she asked. "Yes. I'm working with Lieutenant Khan to investigate a senator who is potentially involved with the Black Hand, but also investigating the Black Hand itself," Daimon explained. Hearing the name Khan, Arya knew who he was, as she had heard of him being a new up-and-coming specialist in the RIA who specializes in tracking down high-risk criminal activity and investigating corruption within the Republic itself. While he wasn't the only one, as he was part of a much larger team who all worked on the mission, he was the only one who was getting results, which made her a little suspicious of what the others were doing. "I've heard of Lieutenant Khan. I'll reach out to him and start working with him on this case, as it has now grabbed my attention. For that exchange that will happen, I can provide agents to assist you in arresting those involved," she offered, as she was already strategizing on what their next steps would be. "That will be much appreciated," This shipment could be a major crack in their armor, but we can't go in heavy-handed. If we make too much noise and botch this, the Black Hand will scatter like rats, and we'll lose our lead. Precision is key. Arya smirked at his statement. Precision? From you? The walking embodiment of chaos. Daimon chuckled softly. Don't confuse creativity with chaos, Arya. Besides, I've always been good at improvisation when things inevitably go wrong. Fine, Arya conceded. But let me make one thing clear, my agents won't just be backup for your theatrics. If we're working together on this, we're doing it my way. Your way? Daimon replied in amusement. I wasn't aware I signed up for babysitting. Arya stepped closer, her voice lowering so that only he could hear her. It's not about babysitting, it's about ensuring the job gets done right without unnecessary collateral damage. Throwing his hands up, he ultimately surrendered. Fine, I'll do it your way. Good, now get out of here, and I'll see you in 2 days, she stated. Daimon performed a bow as he jokingly said, Very well, my lady, before turning around and leaving the scene. Arya shook her head, suppressing a smirk as she turned back to direct her agents. For the next few hours, Daimon continued to investigate other targets that he had on his list, gathering some more valuable information on people involved with the Black Hand. But nothing was as interesting as the exchange that was going to take place. Contacting Sira, he returned to the Jedi Temple to meet up and talk about what they both had found over last few hours. Entering the temple, Sira was waiting for him in one of the quitter meditation chambers, seated cross-legged on one of the cushions. Her eyes opened and focused on her master as he walked in. You've been busy, she said as Daimon stepped into the chamber. I felt quite the disturbance earlier. It seemed like you were having fun, master. Daimon smirked as he leaned against the doorframe. Oh, you know me. Just making friends with corrupt gangsters and uncovering galaxy-spanning criminal syndicates. The usual. Sira rolled her eyes. One day, master, I fear your usual will get us both into a situation we can't talk our way out of. Daimon stepped further into the room and sat opposite her, mirroring her cross-legged posture. You underestimate my charm, Padawan. But enough about my adventures, what did you find? Sira straightened slightly, her tone turning serious. I followed the lead you gave me about the senator. And it seems we were right about him hiding something. She pressed a small hollow projector on the floor beside her, and a video of a Twi'lek popped up. This is Lyra, a Twi'lek who used to be one of the senator's flings before she was cast out because he found someone better. Sira paused, allowing Daimon to examine the holographic image of the Twi'lek woman. I arranged a meeting with her, and she was more than willing to express what she saw during her time with the senator. The video began to play as Lyra explained all she saw during her time as the senator's fling. Chapter 12, Activating Cortana. Daimon rubbed his chin as the flickered off. Lyra's testimony gives us a map, he said. But maps are no good unless they lead somewhere we can plant our flag. Or in this case, evidence we can't just dismiss as circumstantial. Sira nodded, still seated cross-legged but leaning slightly forward with that expression she always wore when she was thinking. The senator's personal communications could be key. If we can intercept them or gain access to his private correspondence, there's a good chance we'll find something incriminating. A grin spread across Daimon's face. That's exactly where I was going, he said. And I know just how to get what we need. Sira raised an eyebrow at his words. I sense another one of your overly elaborate schemes brewing, master. Not overly elaborate, Daimon corrected. Perfectly calculated and incredibly efficient. He said, leaning closer to her. Here's the thing about politicians like our dear senator. They pride themselves on power and influence but forget one cardinal rule of survival: the more power you hold, the bigger your blind spots. And I'm about to exploit every single one of his. Sira tilted her head, intrigued but skeptical. And how exactly do you plan on exploiting those blind spots? Please don't tell me this involves you crashing some lavish social event or pretending to be someone you're not again. Daimon couldn't hide the grin on his face as Sira had grown to know him well over the past years. Oh, come on, Sira. You know that's when I'm at my best, he teased. But no, this one's going to require a bit more finesse, and a light touch. He tapped his temple. It's not just about brute force or flashy distractions. It's about getting into his mind, finding what makes him tick and then using it against him. Are you going to use the force to manipulate him? Sira asked, though in the back of her mind, she knew her master would not do such a thing as it was against the Jedi code. Not quite. Manipulation is crude and noticeable and also against the Jedi code. What I have in mind is more subtle. It involves that Cortana project of mine, he explained. Sira had heard about this Cortana project of his, but was never told many details on what it exactly was besides that it was going to be a super smart droid of sorts. Cortana will be able to monitor the Senator's communications, even the more encrypted ones. All she would need is a few days or weeks depending on how often the Senator is in contact with the Black Hand. Cortana was basically ready to be brought online. All Daimon needed was a few more hours and she could finally be brought to life. Though her body would take some time before she was walking around and joining him on missions. Well, it's not crazy like your other plans would be, so I think it's a good idea, Sira admitted. Sure, Daimon replied. Now I'm gonna go work on Cortana, so there's no training today, consider it a day off in fact. However, Sira was not as excited as one would be about a day off, since she already spent hours of her day investigating the Senator's contacts and talking to his fling. But before she could say anything, Daimon had already got up and left the room, leaving her to mediate on her own. Meanwhile, Daimon walked to his private quarters and began working on Cortana to get her operational. Her core, which would be where her core operational processes and personality matrix resided, was nearly complete. He carefully adjusted the connections between the Kyber crystal core, the neural framework, and the holographic projection systems. Each step required immense precision, as the integration of the Force with advanced technology was a delicate and uncharted process. As he connected the final circuits, Daimon couldn't help but get a little excited. The Kyber crystal pulsed faintly, resonating with his Force energy, as if responding to his intent. He paused for a moment, closing his eyes, and concentrated on his Force energy. This was no ordinary droid or AI, this was something far greater, something alive in a way that defied the conventional boundaries of artificial intelligence. He placed his hands on the core, focusing his mind and channeling the Force into it. The Kyber crystal began to glow brighter, its light filling the room with a bright purple color. A low sound could be heard from the core as if it were awakening. The core flared for a moment, and then the holographic projector activated. A shimmering figure appeared, gradually solidifying into a form that closely resembled the Cortana from his memories. Her eyes glowed faintly, and as they locked onto Daimon, there was a flicker of recognition, a spark of awareness. All the data and information about the galaxy as well as the intricacies of the Force had been preloaded into her database. Aligning seamlessly with Daimon's memories and the input from various archived holocrons. Daimon felt a strong connection to her due to the Kyber crystal that he infused his Force energy into. Daimon, she said, her voice neither mechanical nor artificial, but more human-like. Daimon grinned as he wiped his hands on a nearby rag. Welcome to the galaxy, Cortana. Her holographic form tilted its head, scanning her surroundings. This galaxy, she began, her voice filled with awe and mild sarcasm, is both astonishingly advanced and simultaneously primitive. Hyperdrive engines capable of light-speed travel coexist alongside blasters that still misfire. Fascinating contradiction. Daimon chuckled. Yeah, it's a mess. But in the future, you and I will improve all these things. He leaned forward, folding his arms as he studied her form. But right now, we've got one very specific mess to clean up with the Senator and his ties to the Black Hand. Cortana's eyes started to glow as she started to process the data she had on Senator Krenel. She crossed her arms and slowly walked in place, testing the boundaries of her holographic projection. Krenel. Twi'lek Senator, staunch advocate for stricter trade tariffs. Which we all know is code for lining his own pockets with credits from the corporate monopolies. His public records are pristine, but his personal data has some interesting fluctuations. Significant unexplained transactions. Shall I dig deeper? Do I even need to ask? He said with a grin as Cortana nodded and began sifting through the vast streams of encrypted information. This won't take long, she said absent-mindedly, half focused on her task. Daimon leaned back in his chair, arms crossed as he observed her work. He couldn't help but marvel at what he had created, an artificial intelligence that not only processed data faster than any organic being but also felt alive, sentient in a way that no normal droid could match. Moments later, Cortana had finished her task. Well, she began. Our dear Senator Krenel has been busy. I found communications encrypted with an older code, primitive by my standards, and these messages paint quite the story. Go on, Daimon said. Krenel's been funneling credits through a labyrinth of shell corporations, all leading to a minor syndicate on Kessel, one that just so happens to be a front for the Black Hand. He's not just dealing with them, he's funding their expansion in the handful of Outer Rim colonies that the Republic has. Cortana explained. Daimon grew curious hearing what she had found. Funding? That doesn't sound like just a corrupt senator padding his wallet. What's he getting out of it? Power, Cortana replied sharply, her voice edged with disdain. According to the communications I decrypted, Krenel is leveraging the Black Hand to silence political rivals and enforce loyalty within his region. He's expanding his influence faster than an all-you-can-eat buffet day. Daimon chuckled at her humor but then grew serious again. This goes deeper than I thought. If he's consolidating power with the Black Hand, there's no telling how far his influence could spread, or how much chaos it'll cause in the Senate and beyond. Cortana nodded. More concerning is that he seems to be aiming even higher. Some of these transmissions reference a meeting with someone nicknamed the Overseer. No further details in the messages, but if the Black Hand is involved, it's not a stretch to assume this Overseer is someone of significant importance, potentially orchestrating the chaos. The title alone hinted at someone who wasn't just pulling strings on Krenel, but someone with ambitions and authority far beyond a mere syndicate leader. The Overseer. He repeated. We need to know who this person is and what their endgame is. If the title is legitimate and not just a cryptic moniker, then we might be looking at someone managing multiple layers of this web: Black Hand operations, political corruption, smuggling routes, possibly even covert military projects. She paused momentarily. I could slice into Krenel's private systems and see if there's more to dig up. It'd be fun. Do that and let's see what we can find. In the meantime, I'll get some rest and talk with my Padawan with what we have so far in the morning. Daimon prepared some clothes for himself as he got in the shower before climbing into his bed. Once done he laid down and closed his eyes. A/N, sorry about the slow-paced chapters, the following chapters after this will be a lot more fast-paced but not too much. I'm still learning on how to balance fast-paced chapters while also telling a good story. Chapter 13, The Path Ahead. Their technology was a blend of old Rakata technology from thousands of years ago, and new technology that they acquired from the few passing traders who come to the planet. Their weapons were relatively primitive as they didn't have ranged weapons and relied on melee weapons when engaging in conflict. Hundreds of Jedi leave the planet throughout the year, working as mercenaries, bounty hunters, or soldiers within the Republic, oftentimes selling their services to the highest bidder. Because of their long lifespans and how it's near impossible to kill them, they were highly sought out by various corporations, criminal syndicates, and other services to serve as bodyguards, assassins, and even enforcers for debts that no one else would dare to collect. Despite this outward scattering of individuals, the Jedi as a whole were fiercely protective of their culture and secrets. Feldari was more than just a birthplace, it was sacred ground, untouched by war, or at least it was until one clan decided to conquer all the other clans on the planet. The Isvalis clan, a notoriously secretive and cunning clan, initiated the first overt bid for domination in over a few millennia. Legends whispered that the Isvalis descended from the Jedi who had been altered and imbued with ancient Rakata knowledge, dark secrets unearthed from another age entirely. They were said to have found remnants of an infinite empire facility deep beneath Feldari's surface, where bioweapons and advanced force manipulation devices waited dormant for someone desperate, or foolish, enough to awaken their power. The clans dismissed these rumors as stories meant to keep children obedient. And with the way Jedi society worked, the Isvalis were able to hide until they were finally able to open the infinite empire facility and reap the hidden weapons. About 10 years ago they managed to do just that, and now 10 years later they are conquering clans aiming to establish their clan as the sole clan on the planet and push the Jedi towards a brighter future. The leader of the Isvalis clan was a very strong and intelligent Jedi by the name of Kalar. He was not like most Jedi clan leaders who embraced their formidable resilience, long lifespans, and physical prowess with quiet pride. Kalar reveled in ambition. His body bore scars that never faded, a strange anomaly for Jedi physiology. These scars were rumored to be self-inflicted from experiments he had performed on himself using Rakata technology, pushing both his physical form and connection to the Force beyond natural limits. Kalar's presence radiated both dread and awe. His voice was deep, almost mechanical, resonating with a haunting blend of malice and passion. He preached of unification, of elevating the Jedi above their primitive, clan-based society. The old ways will lead to extinction, he declared time and again to those who would listen. But anyone who resisted his vision became an enemy of the Isvalis, an enemy crushed under his might. For centuries he gathered his strength, strengthened his clan for this exact moment. And now that he had everything he needed, he began his campaign to unify Feldari under his banner. Kalar's vision was ruthless, yet undeniably captivating to many younger Jedi who had grown weary of their fragmented existence. His rise was swift, his methods a blend of calculated diplomacy and overwhelming force. To those clans who surrendered willingly, he offered positions of power within his growing empire. But for those who resisted, he left behind ruins and echoes of despair. Daimon watched this happen through the Force, sighing as his future plans were getting slightly interrupted by Kalar. Coming from a life of suffering and being at the mercy of those who held power, his main goal after being reincarnated is to attain as much power as he could. While there were many routes he could have taken, the one he decided to take was to learn from the light side first and all the knowledge that the Jedi Order had, since they had been studying the power of the Force for thousands of years. After spending a few decades in the Jedi Order, he would then leave and go on his own path to learn what was considered the dark side of the Force. Learning both the light and dark side of the Force would start him on his journey to learn the four primary aspects of the Force, which consisted of the unifying force, the living force, the cosmic force, and the physical force. The unifying force is a philosophical interpretation of the Force that views it as a single, all-encompassing entity transcending the dichotomy of light and dark. It represents the grand, universal aspect of the Force, tying together all things across time, space, and dimensions into one interconnected whole. The living force represents the energy present in all living beings and their immediate connection to the Force. It emphasizes being attuned to the present moment, fostering empathy and understanding the interdependence of life. By springing from and feeding into the cosmic force, the living force created and grew the Force and was the fundamental unity that underpinned all of creation by maintaining harmony between dualities such as life and death and light and dark, while also transcending them. The cosmic force is the grand, overarching aspect of the Force that exists beyond individual beings. It connects all things across time and space, linking the past, present, and future. When a living being dies, their life energy merges into the cosmic force, becoming part of the greater whole. Together, the cosmic force and the living force were the two parts making up the energy field created by, and penetrating and surrounding all living things, that was life, death, and rebirth and everything in between. The physical force highlights the force's power to influence and manipulate the material universe. It encompasses abilities that demonstrate the force's impact on objects, energy, and the physical prowess of those who wield it. By learning all four primary aspects of the force, Daimon hoped to reach the peak of force power and eventually transcend into a force god. To do that, he would need to learn both the cosmic and living force from the force priestesses who resided on the wellspring of life, the home of the midi-chlorians. The force priestesses were 5 beings who were representatives of the connection between the living force as experienced by living beings, and the cosmic force in its role in the greater scheme of the universe. By learning from them, he could also learn the secret to immortality. The physical and unifying force, he was capable of learning from the knowledge that he would get from studying the knowledge the Jedi had and when he started studying the dark side. Now after all this, one might ask what was there to do next. Well, Daimon's plan was to basically create his own empire within the galaxy, starting with his own species, the Jedi. He would essentially become something akin to their god and completely reform Jedi society into a more imperialistic culture, one focused on power, progress, and an unquenchable thirst for evolution, both physical and philosophical. The Jedi, with their inherent resilience and virtually immortal lifespans, were already a formidable species. Daimon's vision, however, would transform them into apex predators of the galaxy, capable of rivaling any known species in the galaxy. But now came Kayla, who would interrupt his plans, which wasn't exactly bad, since he could deal with this problem in the far future. Still, it would have been better to have to change them from their current clan-based system into what Daimon envisioned. And the Jedi weren't the only species he had in mind. Because of his knowledge of Star Wars lore, he had many species that he wanted to bring under his empire to create the greatest empire the galaxy had ever seen. Chapter 14, The Exchange. 2 days later, it was around midday, a few hours away from when the exchange was supposed to happen. Daimon was standing next to Master Corran, his old master who had joined him in watching Sira train. He watched as Sira swung her proto-saber around, which was powered by a belt-mounted power pack. It was the same for all Jedi during this time, even Daimon, which prevented him from being able to throw his proto-saber at people during combat. The concept of a kyber crystal-powered lightsaber not being powered by another power source, was not a thing during this time in Jedi history. This is one of the things that Daimon hoped to change sometime in the future, as proto-sabers were relatively primitive during this time. Sira was being trained by a training droid, an archaic model that was effective enough for teaching techniques. Its spherical body floated mid-air, shooting blaster bolts to test Sira's reflexes. She twirled, each swing of her proto-saber guided by the Force. "She's progressing nicely," Master Corran said approvingly, her hands clasped behind his back. "You've chosen your Padawan well." Daimon nodded, watching as Sira deflected another bolt. "She's talented, no doubt about that," he said. "And given enough time, she will become a great Jedi Master in the future." Master Corran nodded, agreeing with his statement, since if Daimon was teaching her what he knew, then Sira's future within the Order was more than secured. "I see a lot of your own techniques within her movements, alongside a few new things I've never seen before." Daimon smiled, as what she was seeing was the more simplified version of his own saber techniques that Sira had learned. As a few more minutes passed, they were joined by another, Shrimi, who had just returned from a mission. Seeing Master Corran already here, she paid her respects by bowing her head. "Master Corran," she said. "Shrimi," replied Master Corran, returning the bow. "How was your mission?" "It was fine. The Republic just discovered another world and wanted to initiate first contact peacefully," explained Shrimi. "The inhabitants seem to be in the early stages of technological development, but they possess a rich cultural history. It went peacefully enough, though their leaders were wary." "Understandable, considering how unfamiliar they are with outsiders. I recommended sustained communication channels before introducing any major Republic presence." Master Corran nodded approvingly. "Wise counsel. The Jedi should always approach such matters with patience and respect. And now if you will excuse me, Daimon, I have other matters to attend to, Master Corrin said as she stepped out of the training room. As she left, Shrimi walked up next to Daimon. We should have our Padawans test their abilities against each other sometime soon, Shrimi suggested. It would be good for them to experience the unpredictability of another student's fighting style. Sira seems sharp, let's see how she fares against my Padawan. Daimon nodded, glancing at Shrimi, who looked quite stunning in her consular robes. Her idea had some merit to it, as Sira would get to experience another Padawan's fighting style. It would also give her a chance to win a training fight against another Force user, since whenever the two of them trained, he always won but also made sure to teach her at the same time. Sure, when we're both not too busy, let's do that, he replied as his COMM link started blinking. Pulling it up, he pressed the button to hear Arya's voice. Daimon, it's time, let's meet at the designated location. Copy that, Arya, I'll be right there, he replied, turning towards Shrimi. Wheel, I have my own mission to attend now, Daimon said, clipping his COMM link back to his belt. Shrimi was curious about what mission he was on, but she heard how urgent the other voice sounded, so she decided to wait until he returned to ask him. Stopping her training, Daimon and Sira left the Jedi Temple and proceeded to the meeting location. The location was a makeshift headquarters that was set up within the Haskara district docks. Arriving within the rugged, industrial expanse of the docks, Daimon scanned their surroundings. The Haskara district was alive with activity, a mix of steam rising from heavy machinery, cargo haulers rumbling across durasteel platforms, and dock workers shouting orders in various alien dialects. Walking in the commander center set up within a makeshift prefab building, Arya along with dozens of other agents were present within the room. Arya stood over a hollow table that projected a faint blue hologram of the district. Just on time, she said, gesturing for them to join her. We've intercepted some encrypted communications confirming movement of Black Hand agents about a point marked within Bay 47A as the rendezvous site for the exchange. Any updates on what's being traded? Daimon asked, his voice steady, though his mind raced with possibilities. Arya shook her head. Nothing concrete yet. Some chatter points to high-value contraband, potentially weapons-grade tech or rare kyber crystals, but that's purely speculation. Her sharp blue eyes flicked up to him. Whatever it is, it's worth their lives and reputations. Black Hand doesn't risk exposure unless the payoff is monumental. And if they're willing to risk meeting in a high-traffic zone like this, it's no small deal. Daimon nodded, based off what he knew from lore. Kyber crystals are extremely valuable and could be turned into destructive weapons. Then we can't afford to let this slip through our fingers. What's the plan? Arya tapped a few buttons on the hollow table, zooming in on Bay 47A. The hologram revealed a labyrinth of crates, scaffolding, and cargo ships docked in tight proximity. We'll divide into 3 teams. Team 1 will cover the upper walkways for a bird's-eye view of the exchange. Team 2 will secure the perimeter to ensure no one gets in or out without us knowing. Your team, Daimon, will infiltrate the bay and observe the exchange directly. Arya handed each of them a small data pad containing schematics of the bay and key points of interest. We have 30 minutes before the exchange begins. Get into position, stay sharp, and remember, we need them alive if we're going to uncover their full operation. As the teams dispersed, Daimon and Sira made their way to Bay 47A. The air grew heavier with industrial fumes, and the sound of machinery clanged around them. They kept to the shadows, weaving through stacks of containers that created narrow corridors and blind spots. They arrived at a vantage point overlooking the meeting area, concealed behind a stack of durasteel crates. Below, a group of individuals in dark cloaks had begun to gather, their movements calculated and cautious. At the center of the group, a small cylindrical container sat on a hover pad, its faint glow indicating something powerful and potentially dangerous inside. Daimon whispered, "That must be the item. Stay focused." Moments later, a new group approached from the far side of the bay. Unlike the cloaked figures, these individuals wore armor, their weapons visible and ready. Black Hand Enforcers. The tension in the air grew thicker as the two groups faced each other. One of the cloaked figures stepped forward, his voice sharp and authoritative. "Do you have the payment?" The armored leader chuckled, tossing a small case onto the ground. "Credits, untraceable. Now hand over the package." As things were progressing, Daimon felt like something was off, causing him to look to the far right of the exchange where some upper walkways were and see other figures who were armed. Before he could warn Arya and her agents, everything went wrong. A loud explosion rocked the bay, sending debris flying. From the upper walkways, blaster fire erupted as a third group appeared, pirates looking to hijack the deal. "Ambush!" Daimon yelled as blaster fire was being shot from nearly everywhere within the bay. Reaching his hand out, Daimon pulled the weapons away from everybody who wasn't an agent and made them hang in the air. Seeing this, Arya ordered her people to move in. "They're unarmed, move in and arrest them," she ordered as dozens of agents moved in and began to arrest the various groups. Some tried to run or even fight with their melee weapons, but the entire area was already cut off, leaving no escape routes, and those that had melee weapons were taken down. Everybody was eventually arrested, and the package was secured and prepped for transport. While Daimon would have loved to just jump down there, he did agree to do this Arya's way. Chapter 15, Testing Pheromone Ability. 4 years later, 7031 BBY. Daimon, age 24. Since the exchange, Daimon and Sira have worked closely with Arya and Lieutenant Khan to track down and investigate corruption within the Senate. The original senator who they were after was already arrested and trialed for all the evidence they had against him. He was sentenced to 20+ years in prison by a Republic court, which alerted the other people connected to the Black Hand about their influence not being as widespread as they thought. They had fallbacks in case something like this happened. However, Daimon had prepared against any counter plan they had, making it impossible for the senator to not be trialed. All of his accomplices, which included 2 other senators, were also trialed and convicted. However, the hunt for the Black Hand still continued. The Jedi Council had made this investigation Daimon's permanent assignment while also becoming more involved in the matter. Now Jedi Knights and Masters from all over the Republic are involved in searching for the Black Hand and bringing an end to its influence. During the second year, the Black Hand and the Republic had clashed in dozens of systems as their hideouts and operations were being raided, and the people who worked for them were imprisoned. The Senate had approved the deployment of the Republic military to support the Jedi-led operations, marking a turning point in the Republic's fight against the elusive Black Hand. In the middle of the third year, Daimon was testing out his pheromones ability, which originated from the Zeltron species on the world Zeltros. He decided to test the ability during his off time, visiting one of the many nightclubs of Coruscant. The clubs on Coruscant were a world of their own, a mix of light, sound, and an endless crowd of beings from all over the Republic. Daimon walked into one of the more renowned establishments in the Uskra district, its neon-lit exterior in rhythm to the heavy beats coming from within. Daimon's training with the Jedi had always emphasized control over his emotions, actions, and the unique gifts his Zeltron heritage afforded him. The pheromones he naturally produced could sway emotions, alter perceptions, and even calm tense situations, but until now, he had rarely tested its potential. Tonight was different. Tonight, he wanted to understand the true extent of his ability while also enjoying himself. As he entered, the atmosphere shifted subtly. A few heads turned from the crowd, looking in his direction due to his height but also due to what he was wearing. Because of his size, he had to get his clothes custom made by tailor, which he has a good relationship with. Before coming to the nightclub, he asked the tailor to create him a specific type of outfit which mirrored a modern-day suit from his previous life, but also had a few additions to it to make him look extremely wealthy. Daimon's outfit. The suit costs a lot, but ever since Cortana has been activated, he already had her set him up a secret account and began investing in things which she knew would turn a profit, or tactically acquiring money from various rich people who wouldn't even notice that it was gone. Taking a seat at the bar, he observed the patrons. It was a mix of beings, humans, Twi'leks, Rodians, and even a few Devaronians. The bartender, a sharp-eyed Togruta, approached with a welcoming smile. "What'll it be?" she asked, her voice cutting through the music. "Something light," Daimon replied, offering a friendly grin. "Surprise me." The Togruta bartender smirked and nodded, quickly whipping up a drink. A moment later, a glowing azure concoction slid across the counter to Daimon. "You'll like this one," she said, leaning forward slightly. "It's called the Star Striker. Smooth at first, but with a kick, like most people who wander into this place." "Sounds like my kind of drink." Daimon took a sip, the electric flavor spreading across his tongue before the subtle burn followed. His grin widened. "Not bad." As he sat, he loosened his focus, letting his pheromones flow gently into the air. The effect was almost immediate as a group of Twi'leks who worked in the establishment had gathered together to talk about him. "So, who's going to go talk to that gentleman sitting over there?" One of the Twi'leks, a bold woman with green skin and shimmering gold patterns tattooed along her leku, smirked and stepped forward. "I'll take that challenge. He looks interesting." Her co-workers laughed softly, nudging her in encouragement as she walked across the crowded floor. Daimon, half focused on his drink and his experiment, noticed her approach through the force before he even turned to meet her gaze. She stopped just short of him, leaning one arm against the bar, her eyes filled with playful curiosity. "You know, someone like you doesn't go unnoticed for long in a place like this." Daimon offered a small, knowing smile. "Is that so? And here I thought I was blending in rather well." "Not when you're giving off that kind of energy," she replied, her tone teasing but laced with something sharper. "Whoever you are, you're making waves, good ones, though." Daimon chuckled softly, swirling his drink before setting it down. "I'll take that as a compliment." She leaned closer, her voice dropping a notch to a quieter tone. "You're no average club goer. That outfit? That calm confidence? It screams someone important." Her eyes watched him carefully, probing for a reaction which she usually got from people like him, but she was surprised when she didn't get any. "So, tell me, who are you really?" Daimon tilted his head with a small grin still on his face. "Just a man enjoying a drink. And perhaps the company." The Twi'lek laughed lightly, as though not entirely convinced. "Mysterious, aren't you? Fine. I can respect that." She extended her hand. "Name's Lyra. I work here, but you already guessed that." "Lord Farquaad," he replied, shaking her hand. "Pleasure." He decided to use one of the funny names from his previous life that he remembered from a movie series called Shrek, to hide his true name. "A lord? Oh wow, should I be groveling on the floor in your presence?" she said, letting out a small laugh. "If you want, but be warned, I might just have to elevate you back up to your feet," Daimon said, a hit of mischief on his face. Lyra laughed at his response. She was enjoying the conversation they were having. However, that conversation was cut short when a familiar face walked next to Daimon. "Look who it is," Daimon sighed when he heard the familiar voice, as he knew exactly who it was. "Do I know you, ma'am?" he replied, acting as if he didn't know Arya, who was standing next to him. "Ah, I see," Arya replied, giving Lyra a dangerous look, causing her to say goodbye to Daimon and take her leave. Leaving the two of them alone at the bar, Arya sat next to Daimon wearing a very peculiar type of clothing. Sighing again, Daimon turned to face her to see the bright smile that was on her face. "How did you find me?" he asked. "Come on now, look at yourself," she gestured at his entire body. "You're like the only super tall walking problem that I know on Coruscant. So, you wasted government resources to track me down?" Daimon asked in a mocking tone as he took another sip of his Star Striker. Arya shrugged with a grin. Wasted? Hardly. Consider it, field reconnaissance. You're not exactly low profile tonight. She leaned back in her seat looking at him from head to toe. Daimon didn't realize it, but his pheromones were starting to take effect on her. Daimon raised an eyebrow. You'd be surprised how subtle I can be when I want to. Arya laughed under her breath, shaking her head. Sure, Lord Farquaad. You're practically invisible. She gestured loosely around them. Half this room's been staring at you since you walked in. Are you jealous? Daimon teased, smirking as he swirled what little drink he had left. Jealous? Please, Arya replied, rolling her eyes. I'm here to make sure you don't embarrass yourself, or worse, end up causing an incident that gets reported to the Jedi Council. You're a permanent assignment now, remember? The Council's keeping an eye on you. Daimon sighed, leaning his arm casually on the bar. Arya, I am the assignment. The Council's idea of oversight hasn't exactly stopped me before. True, so in that case I'll stay and keep watch over you, she stated as she ordered a drink. For the next 2 hours, what started as Arya watching over Daimon, turned into Daimon watching over Arya, who had drunk too much. She was also subtly influenced by Daimon's pheromone ability, causing her to do things that Daimon had not seen her do before. As the night came to an end, Daimon had to rent a place for the both of them to stay since he didn't know where she stayed and didn't want to get her in trouble as she was quite drunk. But as they were in the room together, the pheromones had kicked in and one thing led to another between the two of them. Waking up the next morning, Arya almost had a heart attack as she woke up and saw that she was sleeping on Daimon's chest. Then the memories of what they did last night filled her head, causing her face to turn red. As soon as they entered the room, she had practically thrown herself at him, yet he didn't resist. Looking down at him, she raised her hand and attempted to slap him, but her hand was grabbed before she could. You know, it's rude to hit people when they're asleep. The morning sun poured through the room as his eyes met hers. She jerked her arm back, breaking free from his grasp. She then shot a glare that was more playful than menacing. What happened last night? Daimon propped himself up as he began to explain. Well, last time I checked, we had a grand discussion about the merits of Corellian whiskey over Alderaanian wine. Or was it the other way around? My memory gets a bit foggy when intoxicated, he claimed, though he was well aware of what happened, or at least why it happened. She covered her face as she couldn't keep her mind from remember what happened. I can't believe I did those things. What if people find out about this? She questioned. There's always a way to spin the tale if it ever comes up. There was no way anybody would find out, but if they did, they could just say it's a lie or make up a good story. Oh? And how do you propose I spin it? Hey, guys, no big deal. Just had a wild night with the superhuman avatar of chaos. You know, at least it wasn't with that whore who was all over you. Daimon laughed, dropping back down onto the mattress beside her. While she was originally a little shocked and a tad bit angry, in the end her desire, which was exponentially increased by the pheromones, superseded that anger. Rolling into the 4th year, they continued working together while trying to keep things strictly professional. It was agreed that they were just two people allowing their desires to take over occasionally. Daimon liked this situation since he didn't want to form an attachment with Arya which would cause certain problems for the future. Chapter 16, The Padawan's Ascension. Congratulations Sira, you have passed all the trials and you are now a Knight of the Jedi Order, Daimon said as he activated his proto-saber and ceremonially touched her shoulders to symbolize her ascension to Jedi Knight. She had passed her trials with flying colors thanks to Daimon's guidance and training, leaving room for a lot of personal growth. She had worked long and hard to reach this moment, and now that she was knighted by her master, it made the moment feel all the more significant. Thank you, Master, she said. I couldn't have done it without your guidance. Daimon grinned, let's not inflate my ego too much, I only pointed out the obvious paths. You did the walking. He lowered his blade, Deactivating it as Sira stood up. They both turned to face the three masters behind them who were all members of the Jedi Council. Unlike the main Jedi Council which resided on Ossus, they were members of the regional Jedi Council appointed as the masters of the Coruscant Temple. The planet Ossus was where the main Jedi Council resided, whom Daimon never saw because most of his training took place on Coruscant. But now that he has trained a Jedi from Part-1 tonight, he would have to go there to complete his trials to become a Jedi Master. He was already recommended by the members of the Regional Jedi Council on Coruscant due to his achievements. If he was older, he would have been gone through the trials based off his achievements alone, but because he was considered quite young to be a Master, the Council wanted to see the results of his teachings. Now that he has, there was nothing stopping him from becoming a Jedi Master. First of all, I would like to congratulate you, Knight Sira, for completing your trials. I can see that the future is bright for you," said Master Valen. Sira responded with a slight bow of her head, "Thank you Master Valen." Turning towards Daimon, Master Nisera sitting to the right of Master Valen had spoke. "Now Daimon," she began. "Ever since you were a Padawan under Master Corran, we have foreseen a bright future within you due to how strong the force is within you. You have also proven your knowledge of the Jedi arts and your dedication to training your Padawan. Therefore, it is only fitting that we proceed with the next steps in your journey." "Next steps?" Daimon said, a spark of excitement igniting within him. He had anticipated this moment for a long time and now it had finally come. Master Valen continued, "As you know, the trials of a Jedi Master consist of 3 distinct challenges: trial of skill, trial of courage, and trial of insight. Each trial will test not only your physical prowess but also your mental fortitude and understanding of the Force. Should you succeed," Master Nisera added, "you will not only earn the title of Jedi Master but also gain significant influence within the Order itself." Daimon nodded, showing that he understood the new responsibilities and the influence that he would gain from reaching the rank of Master. He was already ready, as reaching this milestone was just another step that he reached until his retirement from the Jedi Order. It was currently around 7031 BBY, approximately 30 years or so from when the 100-year of darkness was to begin. Within these 30 years, now that he was about to become a Jedi Master, he would come up with new lightsabers for the Order to use, as it was very limiting for him to wield the proto-saber which was attached to a power pack attached to his hip. He couldn't throw his proto-saber and then use the Force to control at will, plus adding how unstable the proto-saber was, it was overall in need of an upgrade. How he would do this was by going to the ancient Jedi world of Tython and finding the first blade, which was the first modern-like lightsaber created without the need for a power pack by a weapons master of the old Jedi Order. Tython was abandoned thousands of years ago in favor of Ossus, which Daimon considered to be a mistake. Because of this, the first blade has been locked away on the planet guarded by droids ever since the Jedi Order abandoned the planet. If could find the hilt of the blade, he would be able to introduce actual lightsabers to the Order instead of the severely lacking proto-sabers they currently have. "I am honored to be able to take the trials," Daimon said as he bowed his head slightly to the masters in front of him. "Since your ascension to Master is a unique case because of your age, the Central Jedi Council on Ossus will give you your trials," Master Valen proclaimed. "But considering what we have seen you do, and what you have accomplished, your ascension to Master is only a matter of time." "Thank you Master Valen for your kind words. I have worked and abided by the Jedi Code, ever since I learned about them. And with the Force as my guide, I only have to walk the path laid out for me," Daimon replied. "Good," stated Master Nisera as the 3 masters stood up. "Do you have anything to say Master Kren?" she asked. Master Kren, who had been quiet till now, shook his head. "I don't have anything for young Daimon at this time. The Force has guided him on this journey and allowed him to reach these points. There is no doubt in my mind that he deserves to take the trials." Daimon thanks Master Kren for his kind words as he and Sira were dismissed from the council chamber. As they were in the elevator, Sira was slightly nudged her former master. Must be nice to get a chance to go to Ossus and meet the wisest and knowledgeable masters in the order. Indeed, it will be a great experience that I'm sure you will also go through in the future as you continue your training, Daimon replied. They continued their conversation talking about the stories they heard about Ossus as well as some other things. As they stepped out of the elevator and into the halls of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, Daimon had walked by various knights and Padawans who had greeted him. Within the temple and the Republic, Daimon's popularity was relatively high as everybody within the temple and most people within the Order have heard of his accomplishments and connection with the Force. As they continued to make their way through the halls, Daimon saw a familiar face, a face he hadn't seen since he became a knight. It was the young Jedi that he had denied training because of what the Force was showing about the young Zeebrak's future. Making eye contact with Daimon, Eiko, the Zeebrak in question, tried to hide his grudge as he bowed his head and greeted Daimon. Yet Daimon felt the lingering hatred that the boy felt from him not wanting to train him. Eiko felt as though he was wronged and looked down upon by Daimon, who was much stronger than most Jedi Knights and even Masters were. Looking at Sira beside him, Eiko wanted to know what made her special and made Daimon choose her over him. Ever since he was young, he strived to become the most powerful Jedi in history, but as things were, he was still lacking in some areas. Eiko's master was Knight Kalger, another one of Daimon's former classmates growing up. Daimon, it's been a while, he said, stopping in the middle of the hall to talk. Yes, it has. How have you been? Are you still the weakest duelist out of our class? Daimon teased, causing Kalger to roll his eyes. While I have been training, I might be able to last at least 10 seconds against you now, which is more than what I could before. The both of them laughed as they reminisced about their time when they were younger. Also, let me introduce you to the newest knight who has just ascended. Sira stepped up and bowed her head to Kalger, paying her respects to her senior. This is Sira, my former Padawan and now the newest Jedi Knight within the temple. It's an honor to meet the former Padawan of this massive brute here, he jokingly stated. How did you survive his training? I'm curious. Sira chuckled lightly. It wasn't easy, she said. But I learned quickly that my former master's lessons stretched beyond mere combat. He taught me to understand the Force in ways I never imagined. For that, I'll always be grateful. Kalger smiled. Well said. Daimon has always had a knack for pushing others to reach their potential. Guilty as charged, Daimon replied with a grin as his attention switched to Eiko. And this is Eiko, my Padawan, Kalger introduced. Daimon greeted Eiko and asked him a few questions about how his training was going. After a few more minutes of talking, the group went on their separate ways, with Daimon heading to his ship to travel to Ossus. Inside the ship was Cortana in her fully created body, waiting to take him to Ossus to complete his trials for his ascension to Master. Chapter 17, Finally a Jedi Master. Standing in front of him was Cortana within her droid body, which he only completed about a year ago due to some problems and complications he ran into trying to create something which he had never seen done before. Her face was made out of a smooth material to make her face resemble that of a human's mixed with droid features. Her body was made out of the strongest materials which she procured utilizing the funds she had procured from a few willing rich corporations and other wealthy organizations and such. Cortana's look. With a Force-infused core, she had various abilities that some would consider very abnormal for a droid to be able to use, alongside her insane intelligence. Where to now, Daimon? She asked. We're going to Ossus so that I can finally become a Jedi Master and hold some influence in the Order. Daimon replied, as it was about time he earned what he was due. Then the plan is proceeding on schedule then, Cortana said. She was already aware of his plans and had suggested many of her own plans which stretched out over a 500-year period, allowing Daimon to reach what the level of a Force god and then enter the next stage of his life, which she knew was going to be some of the greatest moments in galactic history. Clearing the ship for departure, Cortana simultaneously set a course for Ossus while Daimon sat in one of the passenger seats which had a small computer next to it. Turning towards the computer, he looked at his current account which currently had hundreds of millions of credits in it. Cortana had been compiling the wealth into many shared accounts with high-level encryption to ensure that their funds remained secure, untouched by corrupt bureaucrats looking to exploit them or other interested people. This wealth was not merely for luxury, at least not now. It would allow him to do a lot of things once he becomes a master and after he leaves the Order. Leaving the atmosphere of Coruscant, the ship transitioned into hyperspace, the stars streaking into lines of light beyond the viewport. The journey to Ossus will take around 5 standard hours. You should meditate and prepare yourself, Daimon. Daimon nodded as he did just that for the next 5 hours. The trials that he would take on Ossus would be harder and more challenging for sure, but he can see the path laid ahead of him. It was like an intricate tapestry woven with threads of destiny, each one leading him closer to his ultimate goal. As he delved deeper into his meditation, he visualized himself standing before the council after completing his trials. Their nods of approval were followed by his appointment as a Jedi Master, giving him more sway in how the Order worked. Visions began to emerge, flashes of battles fought between Force users which Daimon knew to be the upcoming 100-year darkness. After that were visions of him meeting 3 very distinct beings whom he recognized as the Force priestesses. And if he was seeing them in a vision, then that meant he would meet them soon enough. Daimon, Cortana's voice broke his meditation. We will arrive at Ossus in mere moments. Daimon nodded as he exited his Force mediation and looked out the viewport. The lush green surface of Ossus was visible as they descended towards the Jedi Temple. Unlike on Coruscant, the Jedi Temple on Ossus was much larger as it was the central temple of the entire Order. The ship landed on a designated platform on the temple grounds. Daimon stepped out onto the platform, feeling how powerful the connection to the Force was here than it was on Coruscant. As Daimon approached the grand entrance, towering pillars carved from rare stone loomed above him. He could see Jedi moving about with purpose, younglings practicing their forms, knights deep in discussion, and masters engaged in meditation. Each face held a story, some good, some bad. The doors slid open, and he stepped inside. Inside, the grand hall stretched out before him, a masterpiece of architecture and